Ladies and gentlemen, I need a motion to call the town board meeting workshop, public hearing Thursday, December 12th at 7 p.m. to order, please.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Right on time. All set? Pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vote a moment of silence for the military serving in this country and out of this country. Thank you. Emergency exits are on your left in the rear of the building, our right. Roll call.
Councilwoman Reamer?
Here.
Councilwoman Frody?
Here.
Councilwoman Hitzelberger?
Here.
Councilwoman Doyle?
Yes.
And Supervisor Fly.
Here. Are we doing public comments? We're doing the public hearing
hearing.
first. Doing the public hearing first. I need a motion to open the public hearing. Proposed local law number 5, amending Chapter 84 of the Town Code of the Outdoor Boilers.
Make that motion. I second.
We have to do the short form is the environmental form first.
I think we have to do the public comment.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this?
You have a public comment?
No, on the wood burning.
Outdoor, yep.
You're something different. Okay, I'll make I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion. A second.
Do we need to read this again?
The seeker.
So the this narrative of intent, that's done, right?
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
That's part of
The short form assessment,
the short form.
that's what we have to do?
We're using the new forms now as of October 7th. So you just need to adopt the resolution of secret findings and then the resolution of adoption.
We don't need to anything.
You don't need to.
All right, I'll make a motion, we accept the short environmental assessment form for the wood burning, outdoor wood boilers law amendment.
I'll second that.
I just have the discrepancy, it's number 5 or number 4?
4.
It's 4,
Because
because
you
it's
had,
5 on the
you
agenda.
had, you did, but you had them as being introduced as local laws, but one of your local laws did not go through.
Oh,
So it maintains that.
so it's 4? Okay.
So this is resolution number,
77.
resolution number 77 of 2013, secret findings of local law number 4 of 2013, entitled a local law amending chapter 84 of the code of the town of Amenia, outdoor wood boilers. At a meeting of the town board of the town of Amenia held at the Amenia Town Hall on the 12th day of December 2013 at 7 p.m. Town Supervisor William Flood called the meeting to order, and Councilwoman
Second. I'll second it.
Vicki Doyle, seconded by, introduced the following resolution to wit: whereas at the town board, the meeting of the Amenia Town Board held on November 14, 2013, local law number 4 of 2013 was introduced as proposed local law number 5 of 2013 by resolution number 75 of 2013, and whereas the town board held a properly noticed public hearing on local law number 4 of 2013 during the the meeting held at the 12th day of December 2013, whereas the adoption of local law amending the Town of Amenia Town Code by amending Chapter 84 entitled Outdoor Wood Boilers is an unlisted action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and whereas the town board is the only involved agency for the seeker review, and whereas the town board is considered the proposed action as defined in section 617.2B and 617.3G of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation regulations, and whereas the town board has reviewed the short environmental assessment form, the criteria contained in section 617.7C of the DEC regulations, and 3 of the text of local law number 4 of 2013 to identify any relevant areas of environmental concern, and whereas the town board has thoroughly analyzed the identified relevant areas of environmental concern to determine if the proposed action may have a significant adverse impact on the environment, and whereas the town board has reviewed and analyzed the proposed action in relation to the criteria set forth in section 617.7C of the DEC regulations, and whereas following its review and analysis, the town board has determined that the proposed action will have no adverse environmental impacts, and now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby declares itself lead agency for this action under seeker, and be it further resolved, the town board determines that the proposed action will have no adverse environmental impacts, and be it further resolved that the town board hereby adopts a negative declaration for the reasons articulated in the EAF. The foregoing resolution was voted upon with all councilwomen, councilmen voting as follows.
Supervisor Flood?
Yes.
Councilman Hitzelberger?
Yes.
Councilman Coyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Prody?
Yes.
And Councilwoman Reamer?
Yes. I'd just like to add on this local law, it does say that it has to comply with all our local building code ordinances. And we have a noise ordinance, and I think that people with wood boilers should be aware that using a chainsaw in a residential neighborhood is 120 decibels. A chainsaw is 120 decibels, and our town code says the noise level cannot be above 60 decibels. So I think people should know in advance that if they're going to supply wood to their residential wood boiler in a small neighborhood where we have the sound ordinance, that they ought to comply with that. Just be aware of it ahead of time.
I wonder, though, that the 60 decibels would be at your neighboring property, or is that the machine itself cannot, I think it needs to be at the property line, right?
But in a residential neighborhood where you have a quarter of an acre, the noise is
Yeah, so
on the
in other
property line.
words, you need to find out what the noise level is from that
Yeah.
chainsaw to the property line, I think. Is that correct?
I think that's what it is.
I think that's what it is.
The local law that you're about to adopt doesn't change
Right.
any of your other
No, it
zoning
just says
No.
to comply with it.
requirements.
But I don't
so-
think people are aware of it. I'm just making them aware of it.
But I believe that's correct. It's the measurement of noise is from, it's whatever it says in your
Mhm.
zoning law, but I believe it's from the property line.
Yeah, and there's also a time frame in this, between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m., 60 decibels. And then 50 decibels between 8 p.m. and 7 a.m., so at night it's a lower decibel. Just so people are aware, so they don't have any conflicts.
Okay.
I had a couple questions. And you left out in the definitions of distributor and end user sections, which were in the DEC requirements. I was just wondering why.
Say that again, what?
The definitions for distributor and end user, they're in the DEC requirements, but they're not here.
Because they're not really applicable to your law. Those are, you're talking about standards that apply to manufacturers, which they do apply. The purpose of the town adopting this local law is that you have enforcement procedures in there.
Mhm.
So I didn't foresee that you're gonna be enforcing manufacturing standards, but you're gonna be enforcing the use of these outdoor wood boilers by both residential uses and commercial uses. But I didn't foresee that you're going to be in a position to be enforcing the manufacturing standards. So I didn't put those in there. You know, I'm not even certain whether you have the authority to do that. That's why they're not in there. So those are, you know, you get into, if you look at the regulations, they get very technical on what is required to be in, you know, the specifications for manufacturing these products. But, you know, as far as the town is concerned, the manufacturers are under that regulation. They're subject to those regulations. It's just a question of whether or not you're in a position to try to enforce that, which I'm not certain that you are. And if you're not, then it doesn't make any sense to put that regulation in your local law.
Okay, well, the reason I asked specifically on the end user, there's a labeling requirement under the DEC regulation that feeds sort of off the manufacturing definition, but if we leave that out, then let's say that somebody purchases an outdoor wood boiler and they have the proper labeling on there as required by the manufacturer and the DEC. Over the course of time, the label wears off. The building inspector goes out to inspect the boiler and the label's not there, then the person can't be fined for that because it's not in this law, right?
That's correct. You can only enforce your law, correct. I mean, you could put something in, you could amend this to include that. I'll have to look at the regulations. I'm not sure that it requires just that the label be on there when it's purchased, or that it has to remain on there for the duration of
The way I read it, it implied the duration,
okay.
but I'm not a lawyer, so.
And the only way that you would then be able to enforce that would be is if it's, if the state building code incorporates those regulations, which I'm not aware that it does. So what you're saying is correct. Then for a requirement like that, with whether a certain label has to be on the outdoor wood boiler itself, that's a requirement that's imposed on the manufacturer. In order for the town to enforce that, you'd have to add that to your local law.
Okay. My next question was that the height of the stacks, these are optional. The required DEC version says that the department may require the roof structure and stack height differences, but in both segments, which are both optional for commercial and residential, you've got it as being required.
I mean, it's up to the town. That's how I proposed it in the draft of the law that I prepared. So I mean, the regulations say you don't have to require that, but I put it as requiring it. It didn't make sense to repeat what's in the regulations and make it an option. In your law, it should be
What it is.
either
It is
required
already-
or not
It's
required.
already there.
Specified.
And I can't recall exactly whether you had that requirement. You may have had it stacked.
It wasn't the existing.
Yeah,
but just
so I
wanted
did
to-
it to try to keep
But
it
it's not
consistent.
Required
what-
by DEC.
I'm sorry?
It's just not required by DEC in
Well, like, I think what you said, the regulations say it can or can't be required.
Right.
So you've got the discretion then to do it. It would be different if the DEC regulations said you couldn't regulate based on, you know, the stack height, but it says you can if you choose to. And again, I can't recall exactly, but I believe there was some regulation that you had in
Yes,
your
we do.
law that way. So I tried to keep your law as consistent with as it exists, but incorporate the changes that that were made by DEC, so it's consistent with that law as well, or
And
those regulations, rather.
the last one was the fine went up by $100 to $350. It was $250 before.
That's you know, that is something that the town may want to consider updating. I can't recall exactly whether it's in the, well, it must be in the town law or general municipal law that the fines that used to be $250, the maximum used to be $250, it's now $350. So I just updated that to be the max. That's obviously something that's got to be imposed by a judge, and it just gives you the ability to ask for a greater fine. The judge would have discretion to impose a fine less than that amount, but wouldn't have the ability to impose a fine greater than what's in the law. So I just increased it so that it's consistent with what's in the town law now.
Okay, thanks.
What's that? Public comments?
Evelyn O'Connell?
You still need to
We
adopt
need to
the,
adopt it. We didn't vote.
Hold it. What do we got to adopt? Oh, the license agreement.
no, the local law
The local law.
itself. You got, you adopted the secret findings, so you still need to adopt the resolution of adoption.
Do you have it? I don't have it.
Ian, do you have that? Do you have that resolution?
The resolution? I do have a copy of
Can you
it.
give it to Bill?
Yeah.
I don't have it. Resolution number, where are we, 77? 78 of 2013, adoption of local law number 4 of 2013, amending chapter 84 to the town code entitled Outdoor Wood Boilers at a meeting of the town board of Town of Amenia held at the Amenia Town Hall on the 12th day of December 2013, 7 p.m. Town Supervisor William Flood called the meeting to order, and
I'll second it.
Doyle, second motion. Following resolution to adopt a local law to be known as local law number 4 of 2013 entitled a local law amending chapter 84 of the code of the town of Amenia outdoor wood boilers. Whereas the following local law, which is adopted as local law number 4, was introduced as local law number 5 of 2013 by resolution number 78. At a meeting of the town board held on November 14, 2013, and whereas the properly noticed public hearing was held before the town board during the meeting on December 12, 2013, and now therefore be enacted that by the town board of the town of Amenia as follows. Section 1, stated purpose and intent. The town board recognizes the impact of the wood boilers have on the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the town of Amenia. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation recently enacted regulations regarding outdoor wood boilers. The DEC regulations can be found at 6 NYCRR Part 3, 2247.1. DEC regulations, the town board acknowledges that any local regulations for the town of Amenia should meet or exceed the minimum standards established in the DEC regulations. The town board further has determined that the current version of the Chapter 84 of the Amenia Town Board entitled Outdoor Wood Boilers, which was enacted prior to the adoption of DEC regulations, is no longer consistent with the standards set forth in the DEC regulations and therefore should be amended. Accordingly, the town board has determined that in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the town of Amenia, the current version of Chapter 84 of the town code should be repealed in its entirety and an amended version of the Chapter 84 enacted, which incorporates all the standards of the DEC regulations. Section 2, Chapter 84 of the Code of the Town of Amenia entitled Outdoor Wood Boilers is hereby amended by repealing Chapter 84 in its entirety and enacting a new Chapter 84 annexed hereto as Attachment A. Section 3, the local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the State Secretary of State. The following resolution was voted upon with all the councilwomen voting as follows.
Can I have that? Supervisor Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hitzelberger?
Yes.
Councilwoman Doyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Perotti?
Yes.
And Councilwoman Reamer?
Yes.
Okay, public comment.
Evelyn O'Connell, Recreation. The Recreation Commission wishes to thank the town board for the opportunity to interview for the open position on the Recreation Commission. We were honored to have two great applicants, and with a majority vote of the Recreation Commission, we recommend Deb Downey for the open position, and hope you will support our decision. Also, I'd just like the general public to know that every March there is an opening on the commission. So if they want to apply or reapply for that position, we welcome that. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yes. Dominic Beburn?
Good evening, members. Mr. Flood and Mr. McDonald, who I spoke to in the past. I'm here just to ask a couple of questions. I'm the president of Washed Aggregate, a gravel bank that existed many years ago and still in existence, I thought. I moved away 2 or 3 years ago, and I come back periodically, and my partners have the property for sale. And I tried to call up John a couple of times, and he finally got back to me and told me that we come under the new zoning regulations, maybe, of the overlay. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right even, but the soil mining overlay, it's a new regulation that took our rights from us from mining. Is that the way it works? Are we supposed to be notified prior to you taking it, or you just take it like a condemnation like Metro North did to us and put us out of business?
The soil mining overlay, I believe, was adopted in 2007.
Right.
And from that point on, in order to establish a new mine or to expand an existing mine, it's necessary to follow the regulations contained in that section of the zoning law. There's no requirement that the town gives specific notice to the properties that are impacted by that. I assume
But there was extensive public hearings and public notices and so on and so
right,
forth.
there would have been a
We never got none.
It
notice.
took us years to do the zoning.
But wouldn't you send them out to the applicants that they're going to the property?
I'm sure the
especially a
town
business?
followed the notice requirements that they would have had to follow in adopting a local law to amend their zoning law. But beyond that, they're not required to do anything.
We invited every active mine and miner to come in and talk to us about where they are and what they were doing.
And how did you do that?
With the DEC.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, then I guess that's the number one question answered. The next question is, I'm trying to buy this. My family's trying to buy these properties, and we have a problem with the slopes on the southeast corner of the property. And when we purchased the property, evidently there was a lot of violations left on the property, and DC came down 2 months after we purchased the property and said, we're closing you down. And we asked why. And they said, because you encroached the property line of the Luther farmstead. So I guess Mr. Amenia, prior owner, encroached the 25-foot buffer and left us out there saying, what do we do now? DEC came down and said, well, we're fining you $2,000 washed aggregate, and correct it. And you go to the property line, which I have a picture of. So after several months working, we got back to the property line. Here's the Luther farmstead here, and here's the place restored. We restored the whole thing. Now, we go to the property line. So what happens when a new owner comes in now, say, I'm gonna buy it now? Is that a violation to start? I mean, even if, forget the permit, say I wanna go build a house there, or whatever it's zoned for. Would I be faced with this violation sitting up here now because we went too close to the property line?
I'm not sure I'm following you.
Okay, you have a
You're
regulation
gonna-
saying you got a buffer.
Well, you're talking about something that DEC's imposed?
Well, but you see, getting a mining permit in New York, it's a two-part thing, is it not? One, you gotta get
Well, you
the
need
town's
to,
blessings, then you go to DEC and get the DEC blessing, so it's a two-part prong. We go to buy a gravel bank in '98 from someone, and right after we get in there, we're closed down because another violation. And the violation was the prior owner dug into the property slope. DEC comes down and says, okay, if you wanna stay open, you gotta fix the slope. So what do they recommend? They recommend going to the property line. But no one ever came to the zoning office to ask them if we could do it. It's a two-part prong thing. And without that, it's a violation to start with. So I think we were stuck with a violation when we started this gravel bank. Am I right saying that?
From the DEC.
But DEC is only one part of the operation.
They're gonna oversee it.
But then your regulations don't count. So why are you blaming me for this? Why are you taking this upon yourselves now to knock us out of business because of the overlay? And you're saying you got the authority to do that. Why don't you have the authority to do this and say, wait a minute, you don't have a permit anyway because you went too close to the property line?
yeah, I'm not sure I,
Okay, let me show you a map then. Maybe I can make this a little easier for you.
Did you talk to John Fenton about this?
Everything but this. You see, here's the application we filled out when this all took place in '98. And this application is a mining application permit that goes to DEC. And you follow regulations that they say you gotta do. And if you follow D on number 12, does a local government require any type of permit mining at this location? Yes. That's the way it was filled out. Signed by Queenie Luther, that's the neighbor who had permission to go to the property line. And this is Dominic Peeburn, the new mining operator, not the owner, operator. So we do exactly what we're told here. What it says, you gotta go to require, I didn't do that. We have lawyers that represent us that told the other owners we have a problem. And I guess it got bypassed. So now if I buy it now, what happens when I'm too close to the property line? Do I
You
get,
start from scratch.
was this a violation?
You start with the DEC from scratch, right, Ian? Pretty much.
What,
And
what
I'm
is-
also-
not sure I
That's
follow
not
you.
And I don't know,
Do you have-
at this point, if it's even a town board issue. The issue at this point is that we had another application come in with a mine that had expired also.
Mhm.
They're not moving forward.
Oh, I don't care if we move forward or not. I just want to know if this, it's okay. I'm not here to argue about we have a permit or not. They're asking a certain number of my partners for this property. I don't think it's worth it, especially if we don't have a mining permit, because this involves two different parcels. This involves a north and a south parcel under one permit, two different parcels under the same ownership. But what I'm trying to say is in 1998, when we bought the property, they encroached the neighbor's property. And are you allowed to do that or not? Are you allowed to encroach somebody's property, or is that a zoning regulation that should have been followed back in 1998? And if it was supposed to be followed in 1998, maybe we didn't have a permit when we bought the property. That's all I'm trying to say. We have to follow your regulation, do we not? If we get a mining, for anything. I mean, zoning. You got buffers,
Correct.
you got, I heard it tonight already, which has got noise decimals, you got everything. So if somebody went too close to a property line, we're supposed to be a 25-foot buffer, or maybe a 50-foot buffer, and you go into it, that's a violation. Whether it's a violation to DEC or not, it's a violation to your ordinance, is it not?
I don't know what the ordinance is.
Mining is handled, it's managed by the DEC.
But use
That is the DEC's responsibility. We can't go in and enforce your mining operation and those rules that DEC has.
Man, this is a $25 million lawsuit with Metro North and kind of things like this, because there's just regulations that were violated and no
Well,
one paid attention.
It's not clear what whose regulations were violated. I don't know what you're
Okay.
talking about there. You're saying
Okay.
that there was an encroachment,
Yes?
but how was there? I mean, you're talking.
Reclamation, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
Well,
what.
Don't you have sideline requirements when you
Yeah, but
do
do you have,
something?
a reclamation bond and all that stuff in place for that, or no?
That's a different problem. That's
No, no, no.
DEC's
No,
problem.
because they
no,
would tell you
same
what
problem.
to do.
Why is it, well,
Well, do you have a
I'm asking a specific question
Well, yeah,
now.
but
I don't
as
care if they
part
have
of the
a permit. I don't care if they have a
DEC,
bond.
part of the DEC permit, there's a reclamation of that site.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. $190,000. Absolutely, I'm not arguing. Do we
Okay.
have it? Mr. Bromberg didn't put up the bond in that 2010, so they said, until you put your bond up, you don't have a permit as far as we're concerned.
Okay.
Fine, no permit. I go by the property tomorrow morning. I say, oh, Mr. Bromberger, you're a nice guy, I want to buy it from our company. I come in there. The first thing you people come out and say, wait a minute, Mr. Peaburn, you went too close to the property line here. We can't let you zone for anything until you come back and modify this. You gotta modify the first problem you have with this piece of property, went too close to the property line. And if you look at 5.7-2 of your zoning regulations, on a non-conforming piece of property, because we're there prior to zoning, we don't have the rights to do that. I'm only asking you a question. I want an answer from my partner, so I go back and look like I'm strong or weak. I don't think we had a permit back then because we violated your regulations. And if we didn't say, no, you didn't violate our regulations. I don't care what DEC says. It's nothing to do with this at the present time. I'm not looking for a permit. I'm looking for the regulation. Did we violate your regulation in 1998?
I don't know. I mean, you have to talk to the zoning
98.
enforcement officer.
Here, okay, then why don't we look at your
You're asking
regulations
whether you
here?
violated, whether there was any violation back in 1998.
Okay, wait,
I have
look,
no
well,
idea.
Well, sure. There was no, well, first of all, if we're there prior to zoning, there's no regulation for us as far as getting a permit.
Well, there was zoning, it was just another zoning. It was revised.
Oh, wait,
So-
let's try it for me, please. 1973, your zoning regulations came in place, did they not? 1973, you finally got zoning regulations on Amenia. Prior
Correct.
to that, you didn't have them.
Correct.
So far?
I'm not sure exactly when they,
Okay. I
think
when
it's
they went into
1974.
effect, but
Well,
74.
Whatever, it's close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I've fought for this court for 17 years now with Metro North. I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. I'm not saying, I'm not God, I'm not a lawyer. But 1973, you got regulations in your town. And anybody that comes after 1973 has to follow your regulations. That's what you made it for. You put them on there, not us. You put this here regulations, this is a 1981, by the way. And it says specific things. And it's sideline requirements. And the sideline requirements are buffers. We're all used to buffers. I heard tonight with the decimals, because you can't, where's the property line? We went too close to the property line here in 1998 or prior. That gave us a violation with DEC plus the town.
I think you need to speak to the code enforcement officer and the
He don't write
zoning
the
department.
regulation, he only enforces them. You wrote the regulations in 1973.
What's the
If you read them,
DEC?
You got a buffer.
I think you need to have a discussion with your attorney, John Fenton, the DEC officer, or the DEC that's in charge of the mining, and see if you.
But Mr. Flood, I went through all this already.
Right.
And the answer isn't the answer, it's an answer. I mean.
Well, it's
what-
obviously the answer you don't want to hear.
No, I don't care if I have a permit. I'm not care if we have a permit or don't have a permit. I care about tomorrow morning, I go and buy this piece of property, 42 acres. I say, okay, I'm gonna put a house there, a house there, a house there, 5 acre zoning. I can do that. But wait a minute, I encroached the property over here. I go, I can just forget that now? I don't have to stay 25 feet now?
Yeah, that's not,
Property line?
I mean,
Is that what you're telling me?
the town board can't help you with that. I don't,
Why do
what
you
is
enforce
it?
your regulations then? Why are we here?
We have a zoning administrator that's doing it. So I think that's some questions you have to ask John.
But John can't write the book. The book is here. You wrote the book. Here it is. I followed the book. The book
That's the
says-
old one, that was the new one.
The new one's worse.
Oh, I
I'm trying to
know.
get away with murder here. This says 25-foot buffer you gotta have
but,
on your property line.
but John Fenton is the one that enforces
And there's new zoning laws.
if you have a question about whether or not there's been a violation or whether there's an existing
Mhm.
violation, all I could recommend is speaking to him.
And would he come back and ask you, Mr. McDonald, because you're the town attorney, and say, can I have your recommendation, please?
He might, but again, I think we need more information on what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying with the regulations state that it's a 25-foot buffer, and we don't have a 25-foot buffer here.
But
We went to the property
my
line.
question would be, it should be, it seems like it's part of the reclamation, which we have no control of. It seems like the reclamation would go to the property line. I don't know what DEC had a plan. You have to submit a plan.
But can we forget DEC for a second, though?
No, we can't, because we don't
But this-
control
say
money.
it's not a mining permit, say we're gonna build houses. Did we create a problem back then for the 25-foot buffer, or we didn't?
But I don't know if there is a buffer. I think you
Well,
need
there
to
has to
talk to
be a-
Mr. Fenton.
There's a buffer in everybody's yard.
Right, when
You
you're
got
building a-
sideline buffer, you got
building
rear and
something.
front.
But-
I built for 45 years.
But
I'm used to
DEC
building.
will, they have to review your reclamation plan, and if it goes to the property line, they're in control of that, so that the land looks natural at the end of the day. So we can't talk about that. You have to go to Mr. Fenton
Okay.
and other people that, we can't decide on this.
May I have one last question then? I also read this here, maybe these things don't count, maybe this just doesn't count, I don't know, but I think I know how to read. And it says, any establishment is supposed to have one entrance and one exit, each establishment. We come out of the same exit as Metro North comes out of. That's two establishments out of one exit. Are we allowed to do that?
Establishment, you mean a place of business?
Yeah.
A residence? What do you mean?
No, a place of business. Gravel Bank's a place of business. Metro North's a place of business. 100-foot apart, that's what your regulations state. We come out of the same entrance. I'm buying the property now, can I come out of there or not? Because you're gonna say, no, we told you you shouldn't do that, Mr. P. Byrne. Do I have the entrance or not, according to your zoning regulations?
Didn't Metro North take that when they took the property?
Ah, good question, thank you for asking. You want me to answer that? 1998, Metro North came in and took the property. Alan Schwartz was their attorney. They had 4 sets of attorneys, and we said, oh, you took our entrance, you gotta pay us. We have no way out of here. So they went and recorded in Poughkeepsie, New York, the entrance, and they depicted the pieces of property, and I have it with me if you'd like to see. They were very specific in what they did, 1998. 2002, they think they made a mistake. So they redid it. 2002, Metro North redid it. They went then filed new. When they filed new, they picked up the wrong piece again. They filed 954116 parcel D, section 11312 of the Luther Gravel Bank. That's the entrance. That's not the entrance. The entrance is the Luther estate on the 90 acres on the other side of the street. How do I know that? 2003, we stopped here because Metro North condemned us, so we stopped in 2000. 2003, Dave Luther comes and says, hey, Tom, you want to buy the 90 acres across the street? I want to sell it. Sure, why not? How much? $250,000. That's a heck of a deal. 90 acres of B1 zone. There's no more B1 zone in your town except that in Jack's. I want it. I build commercial condos for a living. That's what I do for my livelihood. So I make a deal with him. Well, Silent comes in, which you're well aware of, calls me one day and says, Mr. P. Byrne, we want that 90 acres. I said, I'm sorry, sir. I got a lot of money into it. I'm going to buy it. Mr. P. Byrne, if you don't want it, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy your contract out. Silent's got a lot of money, as you know. They bought my contract out. What does that mean, P. Byrne? We sued Luther. We go to the Poughkeepsie court just a few months ago. I can't tell you the result yet because it's probably being appealed. And in 2002, they filed this new thing with the Poughkeepsie Town Records. This is Metro North. They still make a mistake on the properties. So in 2006, Silent buys my contract out for $350,000 more than I was getting. Pays Luther. Says, hey, people, where the hell are you? Lawsuit. I can see it coming, right? I mean, I got rights like you have rights. Nothing happens. We go to court in Poughkeepsie in 2013. This is this year. Get on the witness stand. Prior to this, in 2006, when they bought my contract out, they went and filed that 954116 with Poughkeepsie saying, Metro North, you can have the piece back now. that means we never owned it in the first place. It's hard to follow this, isn't it? I got everything right there in color I could show you. We never had a right-of-way out. I don't think Metro North had a right-of-way out, because they took the wrong piece of property by deed, by description, by depicted pieces of property that was recorded with Poughkeepsie. I know I'm right. My lawyers.
I'm not sure,
Yeah, but-
what are you looking for to have the town board do?
All I'm looking for, do I have a way out now, according to the town? The two people are on the same, the two.
Are you talking about
answers here.
a transaction between private parties? The town doesn't have any interest in that.
Okay, fine, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm the new owner, could I come out of the front, with Metro North come out of the front?
Again, I think that's a
Regulations.
question for for John Fenton, for the building inspector.
How can he answer the questions when you wrote the book?
Well, again,
He's a code enforcement officer, he has a job, and
with
you
all
pay
due
him. We
respect,
pay
though,
him,
there are
taxpayers.
other factors to consider, where the property is located, what zoning district it's in, things like that. And
What?
there are questions that, probably aren't appropriate for,
Ms. McDonald, I explained to you, like the lady said, an establishment, that's what it says in your zoning regulations. Two different establishments with the same entrance. That's illegal according to your regulations. I'm trying to say, how can I get it legal? I want to use the property, I can't come out there, what do I do? Am I landlocked again, so I gotta come and sue you people now, saying I got a landlocked piece of property according to your regulations? Is that what you want to hear? Another condemnation case?
I don't know what to tell you other than to speak to the
You
building.
can come out on all 22.
Oh, thank you. Is that what you're telling me?
Don't you have a driveway on all 22?
Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm just saying, don't you have a driveway on all 22?
Absolutely, and you're the first thing your lawyer says back in, like, you can't, it was the biggest case in Amenia, New York, besides Silent, this case of washed aggregate. You can't come out in the hamlet. Ask Mrs. Tonshaw, she's sitting right there. You're not gonna come out in that hamlet. Ask the lady that owns that little store down there. She was laying in the road one day. You're not coming out in that back street. Am I right, Mrs. Tonshaw, or am I right or wrong? I live with this.
Well, you got, listen, Mr. Bieber, you got to start with John.
Okay.
You have a conversation with him. I would assume you have an attorney, right?
17 right now because
Okay.
of this thing.
And then you're going to have to get the DEC involved at some point.
Well,
would
I
assume.
talk to Elaine every day. I talk to her every day, and she says, that's what we said, you're gonna do that. I said, it's okay, if that's what you want me to do, I did it. But isn't there a regulation the town has, we have to follow with the town too?
I think
That's
you
up to the
got to
town.
start with John and the DEC first, right? I would think that's
Yeah.
what.
What about the land use? At David Everett. For the plan board.
Well, I would start with John. That's
Okay.
the process to be followed, and John can tell you if you know.
Ms. McDonald, he's
what-
gonna call you tomorrow morning if I call him, you know that.
Well,
He's gonna
that's-
say,
that's
Ms.
fine.
McDonald, what do you think? And of course, then everybody's gonna start spending lots of money to find out if we're right or wrong. All I want is to follow the regulations if I could follow them, and you wrote them, and I don't wanna follow them, that's all.
But
But if
also
I,
depends what you're going to do with the property.
do I have a violation there? Could I come out of it? Could I come out in 22 or
No
not?
idea.
I want to open a business. Could I come out in 22? It's not zone business. Could I come out in 22 or not? I
Do you
have
own,
entrance.
do you own the property at 222? Or no?
Just got through telling you, I don't think so, because Metro North just, they
Right.
signed and just gave him the deed back in 2006. No one even knows this yet. No attorneys even woke up yet. Even our appeals court attorneys don't wake up yet. I'm bringing this before you, because I just got from Carolina to tell you first. This would be headlines again, I'm sure, but I wanted to try to get it straightened out before I went there. It's a serious problem, and the town might have to get involved now, and I didn't want that. We had an entrance once, we thought. Renier used it. In 62, Mr. Luther used it. In 78, Mr. Renier used it. In 98, Wash Decker bought it again. Another Wash Decker, they used it. They were using the wrong piece of property by deed. So you can talk about all the rights you want with all them kind of crazy zones you got and zones that people talk about, but that doesn't count when you go over the wrong property. So, I don't know what to say. So I'm sort of stuck here with a lot of problems I'm trying to get answered, or I can't buy the property because it's not worth nothing, because there's too many violations on it, it looks like. But you're telling me, hey, don't worry about it, talk to John. So,
That's where it's got to start.
well, I don't think John's gonna be able to give me an answer, because I wrote him 7 letters already, or 6 letters, and they're more or less says, speak to Mr. McDonald, that's why I'm here, and I still didn't get an answer, but maybe we didn't create a violation, maybe there is no violations there, so maybe we're okay, and if there's not, then I should have my mining permit back, except for the overlay. And I think with the overlay, it's sort of a problem because you should have gave us the rights to come and talk to you. You should have sent letters to each individual. We pay $12,000 a year in taxes to your town. And this is 1978. We should have the courtesy, at least to call us, and say, we got a whole new plan here, you gotta come in to talk to us if
We
you want
had,
to come
we did this plan over 5 years. If you didn't get the message, I don't know where you were.
We've
We
been told
invited
since
everybody.
1998, and we've been paying taxes since 1998.
I don't care. We had people who responded. And that's how this soil
And how do you
mining
respond?
over.
I mean, did they give them notice? I mean, we didn't get a notice, so we got a notice. I'm sure my partners would have responded in a heartbeat.
I don't-
There would have been a public notice of the adoption of the amendment to the zoning
Don't you,
law.
and see, in other states, they send them out to
The-
people, don't they?
That it would have been adopted during a public meeting. There would have had to have
Yeah.
been notice of the public hearing.
Of the property owners, especially in the overlay, wouldn't they?
They were here.
Pardon?
Most were here. I think
Yeah.
all of them were here.
Yeah.
How did they get notice? I live in Carolina, how do I get notice?
We worked with the DEC. The DEC contacted all the miners. Actually, Tony Cahill.
No, not at all. I talked to the lady yesterday. No way, sir, I'm sorry.
Sorry, they were there.
Okay.
I don't
We
think there's
didn't get
anything
notice.
we could do.
Well, okay, so,
Okay.
Please.
All right. Mr.
thank you very
Keefer,
much for
I'm
your
gonna
time, I appreciate it. I'll speak to John Fenton tomorrow and see if I can get some answers.
Okay.
Thank you kindly, sir.
Yep,
Thank you
thanks.
very much, members.
Mr. Collins?
No offense, but I wish I got here before you. Michael Collins, Amenia. Last month, I read a letter to you, the town board, regarding simple quality of life issues and neglect that have been a fact of life for at least the last 10 years. The town was made aware of these issues several years ago. Little to nothing was done to address them, while tens of thousands of dollars were spent pursuing more. I had been expecting some level of discussion. Instead, I was met with dead silence. Should I pursue these concerns at the county and state level with a more comprehensive letter backed by hundreds of photos? In the meantime, I ask that you answer at least some of the questions I had asked. Do you believe paying landscape designers and landscapers to plant trees under power lines is a wise use of taxpayer money?
New trees or old trees?
Right up Mechanic Street, they're a foot from the wires, they planted a few
Well,
years
that's been
ago.
done, what, 10 years ago? So at this point, we're,
About 5 years ago.
I think it's longer than that, you know. Okay,
Is it a wise use of taxpayer money? It's a question.
I wasn't involved with that, so it's a grant, right?
I wasn't either.
Didn't they oversee didn't the state of New York oversee that?
I don't know, I wasn't here.
Yeah. I can't answer that question, you know.
The Mechanic Street grant.
What purpose do the parking regulations signs serve?
Who?
The parking regulation signs,
On what street?
all down East Main Street.
You have no enforcement of no parking.
Why do we have the signs?
I agree with you
Planning
there.
board member Tony Robustelli partially owns a building near the town center and has had broken plate glass windows for years and facade damage from a car crash that occurred last February. Would you like to be subjected to the thoughts, concerns, or opinion of a planning board member who has an apparent disregard for his own property? Any of you?
No, in fairness, the photos that you submitted at the last meeting, I gave them to John Fenton. He actually asked me about them, and he was going to check into every single one of them. So,
It was a month ago.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of issues, so it's.
These
yeah, it's-
issues were brought before the board
Right.
nearly 10 years ago. Vicki, you've been on the board the whole time. What are your thoughts? There's been neglect for the last 10 years. I walk on the street every single day. I see it every single day.
Well, we have been slowly but surely handling zoning enforcement violations. It's a process.
Absolutely
And
nothing
we
has
have
been
been-
done, and it's gotten worse.
Well, we've handled Burlinghoff, we've handled O'Connor's, we've handled a lot of different issues, and it takes time and money. And we hired a zoning enforcement officer almost full-time. We've doubled his hours, and he's working as fast as he can, given the limitations. It's a process that we go through.
Wouldn't you expect that things would get better rather than worse then?
I think they're getting better, but not necessarily exactly where there are spots that are really bad, and we're
There's
handling it
trees-
slowly and surely.
Tree stumps entwined in chain link fence that have been there for probably 30 years. Planting a new tree next to it, what good is that? Why don't we remove the dead? So why don't we take care of what we have rather than adding more?
Well, we did add to our
in the budget.
mowing contract some removal of.
You're not
weeds
going to
from the
mow a
sidewalks.
chain link fence entwined in stumps.
No, I think that's something that, we have
Where's-
to take
which
care of
fence?
maintenance, that's
Oh.
all.
It's right next to the basketball courts, Bill.
Oh, that one, yeah, okay. The one on, where the stream is?
The other end, basketball courts. Chain link this high has been entwined in stumps for well, much longer than I've been here. It's about 10 years now. We spent money on landscape designers and all these things to have somebody come up with an idea, well, let's plant a little tree next to it, maybe that'll make it look better. Why don't we take care of what we have?
I think we can do better on maintenance, absolutely.
I'll pursue it at the county and state level.
Okay, any other public comment?
Tanya, you wanna talk?
This is not gonna be short either. Sorry. I'm just gonna read the first paragraph of my story in the paper this week, which is very relevant for public safety in Amenia. The Taconic DDSO in Wassaic is scheduled to close by the end of this month. The December issue of the Civil Services Employees Association newsletter expresses concerns about sex offenders being moved from secure facilities on campus in the LIT buildings into less than secure community group homes. The article says there is a fine line between the rights of mentally ill people and protecting public safety. Approximately 50 patients who were housed in high security areas on the Wassaic campus, who are forensic, that means that they have a criminal background, are being moved into community housing in communities across Dutchess County. The group homes exist on Sin Patch Road in Wassaic and 2 in Millbrook, Canby Road and 9 Partners Road. I spoke to Michael Kelsey, and I'm going to give you this article so you can read it yourself, along with the CSEA article. And he said he relayed his concerns to the head of the Criminal Justice Council of Dutchess County in a letter that says, I realize that the patients at the DDSO are not criminals per se, and the court has determined they lack the mental capacity to have the mens rea to be tried. Instead, they're judged in need of treatment. I'm going to skip down. While I'm sympathetic to the fact that mentally compromised people should not be treated as criminals, I'm also concerned for the welfare of this community and that we do not release persons into our neighborhoods who in all likelihood will repeat the sexual offenses they first committed if given the opportunity. So I think you should really read this. I think it's a serious issue. I think it's been brought up by other people before, and I think it's happening. And I spoke to several people who work in the group homes, and there's several offenders in those group homes right now. So there you go. Let's see, who else would like this?
I actually have a copy.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah.
Lawyer?
No,
Okay.
That's okay.
Well, I think you need to realize also that those patients were moved there unbeknown to anyone within the town of Amenia. And I think if it's known correctly, that there was an article in either the New York Times or there was a New York paper that's something that they were moving those people there, the criminals or whatever they are were there. They were already there when that article came out. There was never any notification to the town.
Right, but here's the real
But-
problem. It's a state issue because there is
Correct.
something called Olmsted Cabinet, which says they have to be housed in the least restrictive environment. So the state is using that as an excuse, basically to dump these patients into community group homes and say that that's okay because it's a federal law. I think it's a lawyer issue. I think you need to really look at this. It's the Olmsted Cabinet. You can look at it, Olmsted v. LC. I can give you a whole copy of it. It's go through the governor's office, and You know, it says that we are going to be, on the local level, supposed to deal with this. Local level and county. So, you know, why are we having to deal with a problem that the state doesn't want to deal with? It's not good.
No.
Forensic patients. You can look it up. Okay. So my next subject, I'm going to say one other thing that's a little bit yucky that I think needs to be dealt with in the town is that I've been seeing garbage thrown on the side of the road throughout the town, outside of Wassaic going to Amenia, big white see-through bag in that area where there's a big ditch that they just put in. I've picked it up. You've got to put up some signs and say that they're fines. $501 is what they have in Connecticut. If you start enforcing the signs, you'll get revenue for the town, and you will stop having this disgusting stuff taking place. I wrote to Steve Perotti about it because he's on foot a lot, and I thought that he would, you know, possibly be interested in taking this on when he comes on the town board. But I think you need to invest in some signs for fines for dumping.
Route 22?
It's old Route 22,
Old Route 22.
repeatedly.
That's a county road, and the CAC was looking into getting permission from the county to put signs up.
So I think we can talk to Mr. Kelsey about that, because I spoke to him about getting the blind sign for my husband, and it went through right away.
That's true.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next item. Trail to the train. I had the opportunity, because I'm doing a rain garden up near the rail trail in Millerton, to have an informal conversation with Lisa DeLue, who's the president of the Harlem Valley Rail Trail Association. And she raised a couple of issues that I thought were important considerations for the town that should be considered now as we're sort of going into manifesting this grant as a reality. There was the question she asked me was about basically, what is this trail going to be? Is it seasonal, or is it an access into the village of Wassaic? She said it was under her impression, because we are accepting money to make it ADA compliant, that it has to have access year round, because people, it's actually TEP grant, so people can get off the train and get into the hamlet and access the post office, you know, the various food facilities there or whatever it is. So that's one issue. So if it is the requirements of taking this money, that it would be ADA compliant, then the question becomes, if it's not seasonal, it's year round, who's going to do the maintenance? Is it going to be the highway department? You know, she said that really the town should talk to her, because these 3-inch asphalt trails buckle and have bubbles and problems after 3 years. That costs money to fix. You shouldn't be planting trees next to them. There's a lot of issues about plowing, you know, and also she said these TEP grants are supposed to be accessible to motorized wheelchairs and even snowmobiles. So you have to decide, do you want snowmobiles there in the winter, or do you not want them? Do you want, you know, motorized vehicles, which are not allowed on the regular rail trail? The other question she raised was, so safe access into Wassaic was a big issue. She had seen the design, it's 5% steep slope, and there's somebody in a wheelchair and it goes, you know, very fast or going up and down, that could be a problem. You might want to look if there's any regs about how steep a slope can be and still be ADA compliant. I think it's 4.78 is the slope. And then the other thing she said was she was concerned that the design is putting in another trailhead, like a whole, you know, concrete area starting for the trail. And she said they already have a trailhead, which is their trail. She said we don't need 2 trailheads. All you need is a continuation as a spur of the rail trail. And you'd actually save about $25,000 in concrete from this big, huge, monumental thing that I saw in the design. All you need is a sign saying, you know, Wassaic, 6/8 of a mile, you know, you can get to the Lantern, the post office, and Kelsey's store, whatever else. And then the other thing was, I looked at the TEP specs. And it says every project selected through TEP has to be, the development and design work completed with, the development and design work has to be completed within 3 years, but the total project is to be completed and designed within 5 years of the funding approval. So I wanted to ask Mike, when did we get this grant? Because it's time sensitive.
Should I answer now? Or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I believe you know, because we've worked on it together, it was probably June 2008 that we applied and the grant was awarded. That's probably like 6 months later, in the fall of 2008. The town executed a contract probably in 2009, so we still are within the 5-year.
2008, 9, 10, 11, 12,
2009 is when
13.
the clock began.
So
2009.
2009. Okay, so we have till the end of 2014 to complete it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's fairly serious, I would say. We're on a clock to get it done by the end of this year. Otherwise, we could lose the money. It says in this, I don't know if you want me to read that part, but it says you could lose the money. All right, the other thing here, which is important, it says the construction of a project is performed by professional contractors, but in rare cases, it can be more cost-effective and expedient that the construction work may be completed by qualified municipal personnel. And it says that sponsors, you're the sponsor, must have the legal right to use their own local forces instead of awarding the construction contract and must abstain DOT concurrence to do that. So I just wanted to put it out to you that you could actually use your own highway department to build this. If they have the staff and the time and whatever, maybe you'll save money that way on the grant, I don't know. But I just wanted to put that out to you, that seems to be in here and that seems to be important. Okay? So those are issues that I think really need to be gone over carefully, and I think we should also have some public meetings, if possible, Victoria, when you're starting, just so, because this is the largest grant ever in the town of Amenia. It's extremely important for transportation access for a number of businesses, including Pauling Corporation and the Wasaic Project, who are very eager to see it be completed, and I am trying to find out as much as I can to help you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frankie, you signed up a second time. Did you have any other additional comments? You're on again. Did you have additional comments? Tom Warner, you're next.
I can understand why she wanted to push me out of the way to get in ahead of me. That long-winded speech. We have not been able to find out where we stand financially. In my opinion, that rail trail is a bunch of garbage. It cannot benefit anybody except one person in Wasaic. You have a great representation tonight of Wasaic, and I doubt seriously that there's any of them that approve of the rail trail. We don't know how much the landfill is going to cost. We're committed to that. Where we stand on it, they couldn't tell us the other night. Where you stand on this building, you do not know. And now you're considering a rail trail? I don't know where this money's coming from. And even with you're considering a sewer distribution, it's gonna be astronomical in cost with an over.
That's not right, Tom. You know what? You're misleading people. The figures-
Am I misleading them, or are you misleading them?
No, I'm not misleading anyone. You've known what the figures are for the rail trail since day one. They have the grant. So at this point, it's got to go to bid.
It doesn't matter. You still have to match.
We have $800,000 in place, Tom.
Correct. So at this
More
point,
than enough money.
and also to obviously you have an issue with the owner that's involved in some of the property in Wasaga, which it always has been. But if you look at nationwide, rail trails bring more people to a town than anything else known. That's why Dutchess County is spending millions and millions of dollars in Western Dutchess, putting a rail trail together to that train station, to the walkway to the over the Hudson, which was a $30 million project, which is paid for. So at this point, it was the federal funds, and they paid for it. That's paid for. So at this point,
Which one is paid for?
the rail trail,
You can guarantee the taxpayers of this town that it will not cost them a dime to put that rail
there is
trail.
matching funds there, but that's been there for years. That's been here for
Matching
years.
funds is not free.
That's right, none of it's free. It's
And-
our tax money anyway.
That's what I'm trying to say. You're saying you got $800,000 in cash, which you don't have. You have commitment to matching funds. Is this town capable of spending $800,000 for that trail? To get $800,000?
To get it, sure.
We're not spending $800,000.
You're not spending $800,000. The bids aren't even in yet. You know what the bids are.
How do the books stand today?
You're financially stable.
I didn't ask that. How do we stand?
I'm telling you, you're financially stable.
In dollars and cents, what does that mean?
We just had an audit. You're fine.
I beg your pardon?
You just had a financial audit from the state of New York.
Why didn't they know it Monday night?
Who?
Anybody. The town board couldn't answer it. Nobody else could.
I have no
The
idea.
wastewater, are you talking about
What?
wastewater?
Yeah.
I'm talking about wastewater.
They asked
That's
the
that was
question, how
wastewater.
much money do we owe today?
How much do we owe?
Yeah,
Nothing.
We're in
Nothing.
good financial shape. There's not a lot of debt.
There's no debt.
no debt.
You have,
Absolute
You
zero.
have, I think, there's either a loader or a bridge that Stanley has one more payment done. That's done. And I believe the town, the water company, that's paid for, I believe, right? The water? I think that's paid for. I don't think we owe anything.
Yeah.
You don't
Got money
owe
in the bank?
anything on the landfill?
At this point, no. I don't know what we owe at this point.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know how much we owe.
Well, we're
Well,
paying
Without
a million,
knowing
we're
that,
paying $1 million
how
on the
can
land.
you
Yeah.
project adding on to it without knowing first where we are today?
Well, the landfill figures are close. It's about 2.2 million.
Everything is almost close.
Well, it is.
and
There
will
are no,
be,
there are no,
and so on
right.
and so
You've
forth.
known it, Tom, for years. Nothing's changed, for Christ's sake. Nothing's changed. The original bids were coming in at $12-14 million. The bid came in at, under 5 for the landfill. So you saved $6 million off the top. So at this
You
point,
saved it, but you still owe them money.
that's right. You're always going to owe, because we're responsible for 25% of it. That's not our problem. That's federal law. That's the law. It's a Superfund site. You don't get it for free. You have to pay part of it back.
I agree.
And we'll know, we have a conference call on Monday with the financing, if it's gonna happen this year or not. That's where we're at with this thing.
Well, I don't know whether it's finished yet or not.
It's done as far as they can do this year, then they've gotta come back next year, and obviously, they were there working on it the other day, so there's some washouts until the seed gets going.
Well, there's always overrun, no matter how you cut it.
What's that?
There'll have to be some kind of overrun.
But
The $5 million is probably used already.
most of it, but there's contingencies there. So at this point, then the town of Sharon takes over the maintenance. We don't do the maintenance.
That's fine. They even have money put aside for that
Yeah.
purpose. But what does the maintenance entail?
I think mowing it and taking care of it.
Once a year?
No, they have to mow it on a regular basis
on a
so that
regular
nothing
basis.
grows
Is it
up.
in the contract?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
it's
in
all
their
done.
contract.
It's in the
Okay,
contract.
I wasn't aware of it, and I thought I
That's
kept
not our
up on it
responsibility.
pretty well. But I know people in Sharon that are on the committee and they've taken out their money and placed it in escrow each year since it started, so that they do have the funds to cover the maintenance. But they're under
Sharon
the,
was waived from that requirement because they are responsible for maintaining it for 30 years. So they were not one of the responsible parties that contributed to the $1 million up front that we used to finance the first part of this project, to get the cash flow going. Does that make sense? So they
Yes.
did not have to contribute to that fund because they, in their responsibility portion, their responsibility, they agreed to take on the maintenance for 30 years.
well, they did place it in escrow, and they have each year.
For
They
their
add it
own
on to their,
purposes, okay. Well,
to take care of their business.
all right.
But
The only
they're-
thing we're waiting for is the EFC is telling us what the final financing will be on what we owe.
Well, that's
That's
what
what-
I'm interested in.
This
How
year, I
much-
think we
how
paid
much we're gonna
46,000. I think it was 46,000.
Something like that, 46,000 was our
46,000 we
responsibility.
paid in this year.
Before you can start any of these other projects, let's find out where.
Well, you're already committed to these projects, so at this point, they're moving forward. That's-
Which ones are
The
we
rail trail's
committed
gonna
to?
happen, that's gonna go to bid here shortly. The sewer, I don't know where they are with the sewer, I think that's moving forward, right?
Yeah, we have a meeting with,
If it's moving forward, it's
There's-
reversed.
no, that's really unkind. It is moving forward, it's a slow process. And Bridget Barclay will be coming to meet with the new town board members in a public meeting discussing the whole thing late January, early February. So that's where that is. And please do attend so that you'll be informed.
You better believe I will.
Yeah, but make sure you listen, because your facts are wrong.
Yeah.
And that's an issue you have.
I question that.
Well, I question you,
Okay, that's fine.
right.
I can
Just
question
make
you
sure.
as well.
whatever,
I can stand up and attest to what I say.
so can I. So,
Thank you.
no more trouble in your work.
Good evening, I'm Roy Budnick, I'm here representing Ian Holback.
Do you need another client?
Pardon?
Do you need another client?
I'm going to
We may have a referral for you tonight.
I think I'm going to retire
Okay.
about the end of the year here. Thanks for the offer anyways.
Just leave your cards.
All right. We're here to discuss, or to talk about an item that's on the agenda a little later for discussion, but I understand I'm supposed to make a presentation right now, which I'll do. Ian bought the old Bank C, Amenia Sand and Gravel, which was originally started by John Segala many years ago. Subsequently, Callahan Industries bought it, and Ian bought it from them, basically. At some point, probably in the late 90s, the mining operation exceeded the authorized mining limits. And this has been through now a consent order with Callahan, and DEC is in the process of getting ready to issue an expansion of the mining permit to allow this 3.5 acre area that's been affected by mining outside the mining limits to be basically completed, mining completed. And we're here tonight to talk with the town board on how to deal with the issue of the overlay district. And I have just a couple of things to show you. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but the pink outline of this map, this is the mining map for the Bank C.
We've all seen this.
Right.
Yep.
The little green area here, basically the pink line also outlines the overlay district, soil mine overlay district for this property. And the little green area here, which is about 3.5 acres, is the area that has been previously affected by mining outside of both the DEC mining limits and the town soil mine overlay district. And I guess we're here to talk, or you're going to be talking tonight, I guess, on how to proceed with this matter, whether, well, you'll talk about this.
Well, yeah, I guess one question that I have is when, and I think you partially answered this, when did that 3.5 acre parcel begin to be mined, and has continuously been mined since that time?
This is there was an archaeological study done in 1990 when John Scala owned the property because he was considering mining that little green area as part of a larger mine expansion. And it was discovered at that time there were some significant Native American artifacts on the property in that location. And it was designated by the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation as the South Amenia Archaeological District. And so this is an enlargement of the aerial photographs that are available on the county website that the archaeologists used to basically define when the disturbance occurred of that area. And the red area here is the archaeological district, which basically includes virtually all of that green area on the other map. You can see the dates on here. This is year 2000 aerial photographs. This is the mining limit and the overlay district limit right here. Approximately an acre and a half or so as of the year 2000 had already been disturbed outside of both the mining limits and the overlay district, which didn't exist at that time. 2004, expansion continued down in here. There's continued mining. The next aerial photograph available is from 2009, and it was in 2007 that the overlay district was implemented. We don't have a good definition of what went on right at that time. But basically by 2009, that whole 3.5 acre parcel was completely disturbed. And that was the conclusion of the archaeologist who did the work to determine whether or not additional recovery had to be done of the Native American artifacts. Basically, there's nothing left there because that topsoil has been stripped and the gravel partially mined out. So during the course, it's probably starting about late 1990s through 2009, that area basically has been continuously mined progressively into that area, into that field.
But if it was mined illegally, it was not mined with an active permit there?
That's correct. That wasn't the question, but that's correct.
Okay.
It was outside of the approved mine limits.
All right, so what do we have to do to fix it?
Well, there's a question whether or not that this 3.5 acre parcel was legally mined as a pre-existing non-conforming soil mine under your zoning law. And in order to qualify it, it would have had to have been established prior to the creation of the soil mining overlay district and then continuously mined since then. If you have a lapse, a discontinuance of the use for a period of 1 year or longer, that non-conforming use status terminates. And if that's the case, if it had lapsed at some point, then it could not be legally continued to be mined. You would need a zoning amendment to.
But it was mined, right?
Yes.
It's done.
Pardon?
It's mined.
No, it has been mined. The mining is not completed.
Right.
He's trying to correct it and fix it.
That's correct.
But it was continuously mined.
Yeah,
I think that's what the question Ian
right.
has.
The mining has been mined on the property continuously.
Right.
There has been no mining within that 3.5 acre parcel since about 2011.
Right.
Which is when the EC stopped them.
Stopped it. Okay.
But the parcel's been mined continuously.
Right.
Not that 3.5 acre parcel, part of it.
So how do we fix this?
I mean, what your zoning law says is that in the case of a pre-existing non-conforming soil mine, it can be expanded only to the extent that it's allowed under an existing DEC permit. So the problem that I see is that this 3.5 acre parcel, unless the whole, I shouldn't say parcel, it's not a separate parcel, correct? It's part
That's
of.
correct, the same property parcel.
It's
It
part
just
of-
wasn't being mined.
Yeah. And do you know why it wasn't included in the original DEC permit?
No, that predates my involvement with this.
Okay.
I think the permit was probably issued approximately 1977 or 78, and I didn't start working for John Segel until probably 89 or 88. So that was under somebody else.
Okay.
So I have no idea why they defined the boundary.
So it can exist or could exist legally if it qualifies as a pre-existing non-conforming soil mine. What you're, I'm sorry?
It does. Right?
Well, what your code says is that, you can, basically, if the mine was in existence prior to the adoption of the soil mining overlay, you can continue to mine that area as a pre-existing non-conforming use. But you can't expand the mining activity, unless the expansion is in an area which is covered by an existing DEC permit or otherwise permitted under New York state law. So I guess the question is, was the entire 3.5 acres, was that being mined at the time that the town adopted the soil mining overlay?
Well, that was adopted in 2007,
That would have
right?
been 2007.
We don't have the information. As I showed you, the aerial photographs are from 2004 and 2009. 2004, it was not all being mined. 2009, it was. And so at some point, that transition occurred.
The other question would be how much, or do you have any idea how much material was being mined? Because you don't, my understanding is you don't need a DEC permit if you're removing less than 750 cubic yards of material.
Well, everything within that pink line has an active DEC permit. There's a current valid permit for that.
Right, but whatever this 3.5 acre area,
That does too, now.
now it does.
We went through the whole modification process, but not at the time the mining took place. That just, at the time that disturbance happened or the mining occurred in the 3.5 acre part, that was not part of the DEC mining permit. But everything within the pink area was.
So
So
the
the-
area that did not have the DEC mining permit was being mined?
That's correct.
So
Up
now
until
now you're trying
2011.
to add that 3-acre piece to your new mining permit, right? That's what you're
That's
trying to
right.
do?
That's already been done? DEC's already
DEC's
amended the
done.
permit?
I don't know, did we get,
No, it said they applied.
I can't remember. Ian, has a permit been issued for that?
No, it hasn't actually landed on my desk.
Right. That
Okay.
would-
Say no.
It's,
Any day.
Yeah.
But that's what they've approved it. The
Yes.
DEC's approved it.
Yeah.
So what do we have to do to make this thing, can we make this legal? Because all he's gonna do is reclaim it, right? So things have changed at this point. So,
Is there any additional material that you're looking to mine?
There is a little additional gravel there. It's that open scar, which I think everybody knows about there on the side of South Amenia Road. So it's take some gravel and reclaim. I just want to finish that slope.
yeah, the
so
permit.
Mr. Budnick, how do we fix this? You're the expert.
Well,
Well,
this
well,
is,
the question is whether it qualifies as a pre-existing non-conforming use. If it does, then you don't necessarily have to do anything.
it was clearly, mining was taking place within that green area, 3.5 acres, prior to 2007. There's no
So
question about
when we
that.
were doing the zoning, it was done.
It was,
The
Right.
problem is if it was done illegally at that time, then I don't think we should honor that because we have other people who have mined illegally. It sets a precedent. And I don't think it would stand up anyway. In my understanding, you don't grandfather things that were done illegally. I'm sorry. I'd like to do that. It would be easier for everybody, cheaper. But if you didn't have a valid permit at the time to mine that, and it was mined illegally, you can't honor that.
Well, that's with DEC that required the permit, and, you know, DEC apparently seems to be okay with, you know, they're willing to or have amended the permit to include this
DEC is
area.
very aggressive about taking stuff out of things, but I think the town needs to make it very clear what grandfathering means to us as a town. And I would like to see this also reclaimed and done as easily as possible. But if we do say that non-permitted activity, you can't call that grandfathered, I don't think, because then it opens the door for other. That will become our standard of grandfathering. Once we say that's our standard, that's our standard. Then you have Kent Hollow, you have other ones that have lapsed or continued on and say that they, you know, I mean, it become, you know, that's just my opinion. I would like to have said that, you know, there was a mistake, but I think that when we used the overlay map, we got it directly from DEC, and it was not. That sliver of 3.5 acres was not in there. Now,
That's correct.
we thought it was our misalignment of the lines because could have been done at that time, but.
The different towns define their overlay districts or mining districts or whatever, different criteria. And apparently the town of Amenia chose to use the existing mining limits as defined by the DEC, or as their.
Could that have been confused with being abandoned or, you know, not reclaimed properly, so the DEC or even town, when we were looking at the soil mining overlay, thinking that, you know, that it hadn't been reclaimed, it was useless and nothing was going to happen there?
Well, actually, if you're out in the gravel pit, you really, unless you have the maps with you and so forth, it's hard to tell where the mine actually ends. It's been a very active mine for the last many years, and permitted for many years. So if you were out walking around, there were active mine faces in that area that's now colored green, both before and after the zoning regulations went into effect. So I don't think you'd confuse it as being abandoned.
Well, in order to qualify as a pre-existing non-conforming soil mine in the town, it would have to be shown that this 3.5 acre area was being mined, and that the area that was being mined at the time that you adopted the soil mining overlay, it was not expanded beyond that area. And if it was, that it was expanded within an area that was you know, covered by a DEC permit, or was otherwise permitted under New York state law, which, as I said, would be if they could show that they weren't mining more than 750 cubic yards of material, you can do that. Again, that's my understanding, without a DEC permit.
Right.
But it doesn't meet either of that criteria. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, there's a question of whether it does, and you know, it's a determination, I suppose.
Well, I suppose if they brought in receipts of gravel that was known to have come from that 3.5 acre slice, you know, I'm trying to. The case is very similar, unfortunately, to Kent Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
Kent Hollow says we were mining that, we intended to mine it, and we said, but you failed. You have an inactive permit. It didn't. You let it lapse for years and years and years. You were not active. And he said, well, we were mining. Well, that's illegal. So that's not a grandfathered use. It seems so parallel that I think if you say to them, yes, the 3.5 acres was grandfathered, then you have to also say it to possibly P-Burn, whoever else was, can say they've been pulling out 750, tons a year.
So are you looking for a way to add this to the soil mining overlay for purpose of reclamation?
Well, let's just say that we can't go under, say, grandfather rights. What would be the next
Step.
How do we proceed forward with this? And I have so much money tied up into this open scar that I just really want to reclaim. I
Right.
do need to get some of that last little bit of gravel out of it, just to make some sort of sense of this, and reclaim that corner there. It's been laying like that, far too long, and,
I think we're willing to do the mapping that needs to be done to update our zoning maps, which have to be done anyway. I think the CAC and the county are willing to help with that, so I don't think that's a cost that you would necessarily have to bear, in my opinion.
But we
Ian's
need to
already
do more
provided
than
the
that.
meets and bounds
They would
description
do
for
the
the
meets and
3.5.
bounds,
So you
right.
have that.
So you just have to add that 3 acres into the overlay.
Into the
Right, we have to
overlay.
do work anyway, so we
Right.
do that too.
It would be an amendment to your soil mining overlay or an expansion of it.
We'd have to
Okay.
make sure it meets all the criteria that's in their comprehensive plan,
Correct.
and
So you have to make sure it's
do
an
the whole
appropriate
process.
piece of land that's to be included in the soil mining overlay.
Right.
They'd have to get a special use permit, I'm assuming.
And then you'd have to follow the regulations that are in the soil mining overlay. So it would be a special use permit issued by the town board.
Yeah, now, have you provided us with a request in writing to add the 3.5 acres to the soil mining overlay? I would think we would need
No.
something, wouldn't we?
But my understanding was we were here tonight to sort of get a sense of how to proceed.
I mean, I'm just looking at next steps.
If Ian's making the request, it would be an application. I don't know that if you have an application form for a zoning amendment. Obviously, you went through this with Ridgecrest Farm,
Yeah.
so it would be the same process. This is a much smaller area. But yeah, it would be some application.
So
Made
it's the
by-
same, you would have to follow the same process in order to get ahead.
Now, did the secret that you did for the DEC, is that going to work for his current
Well,
application? Or is it-
Do you know, did DEC, their environmental review, did they do a coordinated review? I don't recall seeing anything where the
I
town.
don't recall either if they did or not.
But if they did a coordinated review,
That should work.
you don't need to do another environmental review. If it was done by DEC and the town was included as an involved agency, in fact, you would be subject to the determination made by DEC, so you wouldn't have to do seeker again. I would assume that they did this as a coordinated review, but I just don't know. I don't recall seeing anything, but it doesn't always go to me. It would have been a letter to the town, and,
So what you need to do going forward is to start the application process so that we can go ahead and add that.
Yeah, we'll go back to our homework, see
It's
what
pretty
we
simple.
actually have to go through, what we
Right.
already have.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, if we have to go through, say, almost the same process as Ridgecrest, this little thing
It's not gonna be worth
doesn't
it.
make any sense, so, so
No.
we'll have to,
Right.
go back to the drawing board.
Okay.
well, you've already got the meets and bounds description for the area. It's just a matter of determining whether the environmental review process that was followed by DEC is binding on the town. Even if it isn't, it would,
Well, it's
I mean, I don't
previously
think it would be a
disturbed, right?
type
So
1 action.
Yes.
it's not like you're going to make it worse, you're gonna make it better.
That's
So
correct.
I don't think,
Yeah.
they've already done the archaeological study and it's been determined
Because
it's
of the
not.
size of the property, I don't think it triggers type one action. I think it would be unlisted. I have to double check, but, you know, it would be the adoption of a local law. Yeah, obviously you have to
Public
make
hearing.
those determinations consistent with your comprehensive plan that the property is appropriate to be included in
Right.
soil mining overlay. But it would be adoption of a resolution of introduction for the local law amending your zoning law to include this property in the soil mining overlay. Have a public hearing and then adopt the local law. And then depending on what you're looking to do in the future, if there's gonna be additional mining, then it would be subject to a special use permit issued by the town board. And the other issue with the adoption of the zoning amendment would be a conservation easement, but that's up to the town board. You have the authority to require a conservation easement.
But we don't have to have it on that 3.5 acre.
No, I don't think
It's,
so.
yeah, entirely up to.
It's up to him,
Wouldn't-
really.
Yeah,
It's
Not
not gonna
3.5
be-
acres.
Right, it's gonna be what it is. Right, it's not worth
So we
it,
can
right.
Put everything you want on
Yeah, okay.
it. All right. well,
All right.
thanks
Just
so
so
much.
you know how to proceed, so you can get started instead of kind of being in limbo there.
Yeah, well, we only have some more to do.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks a lot.
Excellent.
Should come in afterwards?
We were still under public comment initially.
He started as, so, but we're done with that agenda item.
Okay.
Kind of just kept falling.
Good evening, Cheryl Morse. I'll keep my comments brief because that was lengthy. I just had a couple of issues in thinking about what Mr. Collins was questioning earlier. And given my background in landscape and large trees, I just had a couple of concerns looking at the trees and the pavers that were put in under the benches. And I was wondering if anybody involved in that project, particularly any consultants you used, made any recommendations regarding root pruning on the existing trees where it's encroached inside the drip line of those trees. I have a lot of experience with big trees, moving big trees, and I'm talking major, major trees. I have some concern just from what I noticed, because normally when you do that kind of construction, at least 2 years before you do something like that, the trees should have been root pruned, because the feeder roots of the trees are within the first 18 inches of the soil. And of course, the pavers sit within that depth adjacent to the existing street trees. And my concern is that because they may not have been root pruned, those trees may die as a result. And you may need to, in the spring, and I'm willing to talk to the board about this because I'll have recommendations for you and I can even write them up, that certain things should be done with respect to feeding those trees to prevent shock when they come out of dormancy, so that maybe we can save them and they won't die. Like I said, I've had a lot of experience with this over the years. It's my professional field, and I would hate to see us lose those trees because I don't know if the consultants that you used actually discussed that with the town and let you know that should have been done.
That's on library property, and the library was just gonna have that tree handled themselves. They didn't want us involved with the tree. So
Okay.
I would talk to the library, because they seem to have, that, you're talking about the maple next to
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so that's
And
the
if there
library.
were any other trees in those zones, and in the future too, with any kind of construction like that, any consultant that you use, should give you some indication. If you have to go into the root zone of those existing trees, that certain care has to be taken so that, you don't kill them just from lack of knowledge or being informed.
There was a landscape architect that was fully involved in the whole process, so at this point, I'm sure he's well aware.
Some landscape architects don't know horticulture and cultural
Well,
requirements.
I think he
I
does.
do, so,
I think he does also.
okay, well, hopefully.
I'm sure he does. The Wassaic Fire District.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert McCall. I'm the attorney for the Wassaic Fire District. I've been here before to discuss with you the Wassaic Fire District and the ambulance service. Ian and I have talked a couple times on the phone, and so I'm really just here for your information to explain to you what's happening. Very briefly, historically, fire departments, fire companies did not provide ambulance service. They just provide fire protection. And ironically enough, when someone had to go to the hospital, it was normally the hearse that transported them to the hospital, which is why so many original ambulances were Cadillacs. Point of useless information for you. Over time, fire departments created rescue squads to protect their firefighters at emergencies. That then morphed into the fire department providing an ambulance service to the town or the district that they served entirely, to the non-firefighters. The law was changed, I think, in the 1920s or 1930s for fire districts to take the option of providing ambulance service. And so it has grown, and I believe in Wassaic and Amenia along those lines, that the fire department provided the ambulance service and it was part of the fire district tax. There was no obligation upon the fire districts to provide it, as there is to provide fire protection. As all of you know, the volunteers in fire districts, fire companies have dwindled. The requirements for an ambulance service have increased just because of the ALS and the BLS, advanced life support, basic life support services, the time involved, the number of calls. The Wassaic Fire District has gotten to the point where they can no longer provide ALS service. And so with the beginning of the year, they're going to stop providing ALS service. And what does that mean for the residents of the Wassaic Fire District who currently have that? The Wassaic Rescue Squad will continue to exist. It is anticipated that they will continue to provide what we would call basic life support, first responder. They would, continue to do the twisted ankles, not feeling well kind of calls, but they would not be providing ALS service, probably not transporting to hospitals. They would try to provide backup service to the ambulance that provides the primary ALS, but there's not an assurance that that would happen either. So what does that mean for the residents when they call for an ambulance? County 911 Center will dispatch, what is a backup provider to the Wassaic Fire District. And right now it's NDP. But if NDP is not available, they'll go down the list and look at Empire Ambulance, Northern Dutch, Transcare, whatever ones are available. It's possible, and it has happened, that we've heard calls for an ambulance, to go to Millbrook, and they're responding from Highland, for example. And so there is the exposure that there may not be an ambulance close enough. Some of the solutions to the problem, if you will, would be for the town to provide an ambulance provider, enter into a contract with the provider to provide ambulance. That would ensure to a certain level that there is an ambulance in the area all the time, that there is provisions for a backup ambulance to move into the area when the primary one is out. You could do that via contract. You could do that via creating an ambulance district. And why are the differences? You may know that Dover Town is providing an ambulance through a contract. For them, it works because their fire protection district is the same boundaries as the town. Should you provide by contract an ambulance for the Wassaic area, everyone in the town is going to be paying for it, even those that are living and served by the Amenia Rescue Squad and Fire District. So that may be an unfair burden to the town as a whole to provide an ambulance for the Wassaic area. You could create an ambulance district for the Wassaic Fire District boundaries, in which case you would then be able to provide an ambulance under contract, and the taxpayers in that ambulance district would pay for it only. You could do nothing and allow the nearest ambulance servicer to cover the calls, and to a great extent that has happened and has not been terribly detrimental. And so we're really here just today to make sure that you're aware that we're not going to be providing that ALS level of service come the first
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since the Wassaic Fire District, obviously we have a private, the Wassaic Fire District owns and runs the rescue squad in Wassaic Fire District. the Amenia Rescue Squad is a private entity not paid for by the taxpayers, correct?
I believe that's correct.
So we have two separate
Providers in town.
providers. Can the Wasaig Fire District just enter into a contract with an ambulance provider and be done with it?
They can.
Isn't that the easiest way to do it at this point?
It's the easiest way, but it's probably the more cost, it's not the cost effective.
The problem is we have one district that doesn't want it and the other district that does want it. We've had these meetings before.
Right.
So that's where we're at. One district feels that they can run their own district, which that's their opinion. Obviously, Wasaig is gonna stop. Is it not all right for the Wasaig district just to say, okay, we're gonna spend $250,000 or $300,000 and we're gonna have a private ambulance service cover the Wasaig Fire District?
They could enter into a contract, but it's not cost effective.
Correct.
Again.
Well, is it gonna be cost effective for the town to do it?
The big difference between a fire district entering into such a contract and the town doing it, whether it be through a contract or through a fire district, is that the the town or the town ambulance district can charge for the service, whereas a fire district is specifically prohibited from charging for the service. You know, what does that mean? It means that somebody who has insurance, the insurance company will pay for a portion of that transport call. Whereas if it's the fire district that's contracting, that's not available to them. They're specifically excluded from doing that under state law. So that's the big difference as far as financial.
So Northern Dutchess now doesn't charge, they don't get paid?
Northern Dutchess probably charges them. They charge.
What?
They charge, they have a fact.
Yeah, but so how's that working?
They charge your insurance company.
Right. So what's the difference if they're
Because
doing-
the fire district can't enter into a contract with NDP and then have the patient.
So here it's the Amenia Rescue Squad has entered into that contract?
I don't know about me, but I don't think they have either. I mean, I think most of the ALS providers now are coming as a backup, and they probably of their own volition and charge the patient.
What's Dover pay? $250,000, $500,000?
Honestly, I don't know. I know it's a couple $100,000, but I don't know. And that's for 12 hours.
Yeah, and they're going to 24/7 at the beginning of the year.
Well, most are.
I have something really important to add to this. The Affordable Health Care Act, I just found out today, does not provide any insurance to transport people to Sharon Hospital. I, signing on, will have to go to St. Francis Hospital. So that means everybody who goes to your Hudson River Health Care, all the poor people, not poor people who get Affordable Health Care Act funding with new insurance, are not able to go over the state border. You're gonna have a lot more ambulance calls going to Poughkeepsie.
Costing a lot more.
Costing a lot more, so you need to consider that. Big news.
Well, it's also a question Sharon Hospital could close. So
Right.
they're on the verge of closing.
Well, they've just changed hands.
Right, well, and it's very, very iffy if it's gonna stay open. So,
They've just gotten a new buyer.
I know.
Yeah.
And they've got signs out front saying they're expanding.
They've been expanding for 30 years, but they're still broke. So it's an issue.
So what will happen come January 1st is that the ambulance will continue to be dispatched. And I mean, Northern Dutchess knows, I believe, that Wasaig is not going to have an ALS ambulance. And so if they're savvy with their business, they will probably have an ambulance in the area. And to a great extent, they have had an ambulance in the area to cover those calls. But there's no obligation on their part to have one here. And, you know, there's only so many ambulances, and if you have one more call than there are ambulances, someone's going to lose out. And I'm not saying that even creating an ambulance district and getting a contract with an ambulance provider is going to solve that problem. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a bigger.
Well, I've talked to a bunch of them before we had this conversation.
Yeah.
They price it on the availability of the ambulance. It could be in Highland, it could be in Torrington when they get dispatched. That's cheaper
Right.
than if they're parked here, like Dover, they park it there, correct? So you pay a premium price.
And even in an airtight contract, right, where they promise to have 10 ambulances here, you know, 24/7, there's going to come a time when they're not going to be here.
Well, we already went through that with that accident on, where they pulled an ambulance out of Pauling, and Pauling was moaning and groaning, they pulled their Correct. You pulled their ambulance out of mutual aid, and, you know, I listened to the supervisor moaning and groaning and screaming.
It's a solution that needs a broader impact than just a fire district or a town. It needs a regional impact, maybe not county, but at least a broader impact than the way the system is now, and there's not an easy fix to it.
Is the county doing anything with this at all, or no? Nothing?
County doesn't want to touch it because it'll cost them money to raise their tax bill.
Well,
Can I ask a question? Does Wausau want to stop the service, or they can't give the service? So is it, does the fire company want to stop it, or is it just they don't have the funds to keep it moving?
It's not the company, it's the fire district.
The fire,
Fire, there's two separate things.
Okay.
Company and fire district. Fire district is one that make decisions.
but the ambulance,
They're gonna stop it.
they're gonna stop.
It's a manpower.
It's a manpower issue. I mean, is there any way to get something together to kind of help with the manpower issue? Looking ways to, you know, get more volunteers, looking ways to hire EMS or anything? I agree. You know, I agree, and there's a lot of things that are changing in these times. So, you know, are the old ways that we used to have volunteers, they're not working anymore. So how do we explore to find new ways to get the volunteers?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, years ago, maybe even 15, 20 years ago, we were fire departments with an ambulance service. Now, we're an ambulance service that has a fire truck. And so we're doing a lot more ambulance calls because there are a lot more people here. The people that have moved to the communities, they are used to having paid ambulance and paid fire departments. They don't see that as an area they need to volunteer.
I'm just trying to understand it. I mean, if I was in an issue and I needed an ambulance or my family needed an ambulance, I would much rather have someone that I knew from the community, not a paid service. You know, that's what I would want, you know? And it seems like there's a broken system. Can we try to fix it somehow? You know, or are we just saying it's not available and that's it?
Unfortunately, the volunteer fire service is under attack as well.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, this is something that's been going on
One more meeting,
now.
that's it.
I've been fire chief for 5 years, been dealing with, Robbie was fire chief before I was. I mean, we've both been dealing
I'm
with
out of
this
here.
for
You guys can have
13
champagne.
years
You'll be
plus.
happy.
This same issue, every year we come to the town board, it's the same thing.
I don't
It's
drink and
more or
drive.
less, we're here to tell the town that we might not be, there might be a day that we don't have anybody around. We want the taxpayers to know, listen, there is a problem that us or me, I mean, I can't speak for me, but there's gonna be times that we might not show up.
I mean, is it a technicality that is kind of releasing you guys from liability?
Correct.
All right, because now,
That's
so-
that's what this is. This is what it's doing because by us being here, telling the town, we're taking and saying, we have a problem.
Okay.
If we don't show up, it's taking.
So it's releasing the district or whatever you want to call it from the responsibility. So if then there is a problem, it releases the ambulance side of it, turns it on the town side of it, I would
And
guess.
that's what it's doing.
Okay.
Because
But that's where we've had the issue before.
But this is where, that's why Rod's here explaining that is, the fire district is telling, the fire district only has to provide fire service, not ambulance service. And that's what we're telling them.
That's what you're saying, okay.
And
So, I mean-
and that's what we're here, that's why we're doing this.
It's a technicality to release you, but if a call comes in, if there's someone there, the
They're gonna go.
ambulance is gonna go. If we find ways to up the volunteer, to up the manpower or something, there's a chance that you're gonna say, hey, great, we're gonna cover it.
I mean, we're still gonna, we're not gonna disappear. If they're around, they're gonna go. You know what I mean? But it's getting tough. I mean, there is days, and it's tough.
No, and I can understand that. You know, I can understand that. It's just trying to find a way that
believe me, that.
Everybody could coexist
Everybody's
and
been
work
on,
together.
Victoria knows, Vicky knows, we've been here before, we've been doing this for years. Years.
You know, we had a meeting this summer with Northeast and Pine Plains, I
Yeah.
think, and I think Dover was even here. Is that a possibility to get, as you speak about a regional effort?
That is a possibility, although
Yeah.
the problem in that is if you get towns together. I mean, it was tried for a while in this Pauling, Dover, Beekman, Unionville tried to do it. And each one of them wanted the ambulance in their district. But they couldn't justify the cost of 4 ambulances. And so then they only have 2 ambulances. Okay, so where's it going to be? It's going to be in Pauling. So why is Unionville paying as much money as Pauling is paying when Pauling is using the ambulance more and it's there? So then you got into intertown squabbling.
Couldn't it be some consortium of some sort
Well,
that
it almost
there's
would
one
need,
entity?
in a theory, which is a nightmare, is another layer of government, would be all
Yeah.
the 4 towns to appoint a commissioner or
Right.
somebody to a 4 or 5 town area.
Right.
But that's another level of government, and that's
we've
difficult.
been down this road. We were so close when Robbie was chief. We were really close. We had all 4 towns, and then it just fell apart. We were close to having us shared, getting something where we all shared, which would make more sense because of the call volume.
Yeah, it just seems you could draw on so many more people.
Scott,
And
I know that the fire trucks back each other up.
The ambulances do too.
The ambulance do too, so you are using Amenia
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah.
a backup, you are using Dover for a
Correct.
backup.
Correct.
But see, in that case, Dover, they balk at their ambulance backing up Wassaic because they're paying for their ambulance to be there, and they don't want their ambulance leaving
Just
the
like
town.
Palmer, and then Northern Dutchess doesn't have any rigs available. You're pulling the ambulance that Palmer taxpayers are paying for to come up here and provide for us. Now, we've just heard a bunch of things here as I sat here tonight. We heard all these patients going out into the community. We heard her say about the Healthcare Act. We just said that maybe that Sharon Hospital, it has been rumors that that's going to be closing. The one thing that we've been lucky for here in Amenia and every town around here, that Northern Dutchess has been based here because of that hospital. If that hospital closes, they're not going to stay there. They're going to be gone. And then that's going to be a whole different burden on all of us here, not only in Amenia, but everybody else in the whole area. Because as soon as that hospital is gone, they have no reason to stay here. They're going to pull out.
Sure.
We're trying, every year for the last 9 years I can speak of, and Robbie's been dealing with it longer than that. We've been here every year to the town saying there's a problem, we need to do something. The town really needs to take something, we have to come up with some kind of plan. We really do.
Well, we've met, and the fire departments, you guys walked away. So,
We didn't.
well,
The thing is, we're trying to do this as the cheapest way as we can for the taxpayers.
there is no cheap way of doing this, in reality. It's gonna cost money, there's no question. It's gonna cost a lot of money. But
Well, I think we should do, I thought we were at the point where you guys were gonna come back and tell us what the next step legally is for us to create a district for 12 hours, right? For
Well, it was something I
12-hour
think
coverage during the day, so
that
that
he and I
at
had
least.
spoken about some time ago, and at that time, shortly after, we went through a period in Wassaic where we were getting the ambulance out.
Oh,
right.
All right,
So
and
it
that,
kinda slowed that down.
was a
But this
blip.
process takes a year or so, right? Does you have to get some kind of a license or something?
It would take a long time.
It's a couple years.
Years to start anything. I know when we were here in March, when we first came, it was discussed, and unfortunately, media is not here, so we can't speak for them. It is, and I believe most of the board members, when we left that meeting, was that the best thing probably to do is start a committee with this, the ambulance districts, one for Amenia, one for Wassaic. I think that's the most logical thing to do, because there's going to come a point in time when the other fire company's going to be in the same boat. Because every town is. Miller just went through it. Dover's going to pay
24/7.
24/7 instead of 12 it's here. We're just trying to put a Band-Aid on it, but it would behoove the board, and the new board, to appoint X amount of people to start looking at these districts for the ambulance districts. You know, if Wasake's gotta go first before Amenia, that's fine, but do it all together, and then whenever it has to be done, the paperwork is already there. And then let the voters decide.
Now,
You know, and it's gonna take time to do that, but you should include the chiefs, 2 commissioners from each department, and the captains and rescue squad, and a couple board members to start this process. And when we were here in March, I thought that's the way we were going, and then it kind of got shuffled around, and then, of course, politics took over, the elections, and now here we are again. So, that would be my suggestion, is we are still going to provide the coverage as best as we can. You just can't guarantee it 24/7. That's what we're saying. And we want the town to know that, to take the liability off of us.
Isn't it also true that a lot of the revenue stream for donations for the Wasake Fire Company does come as a result of the rescue calls that you guys respond to? That's my understanding from fire, and people involved with the rescue squad that I know. And the other concern with that then is if they lose the rescue squad, that's going to affect your funding and your revenue stream from donations from citizens. And that could seriously impact
well, they're not
the
saying
fire.
No, we aren't losing.
You're not saying they'll lose the rescue squad.
Okay.
They're not going nowhere.
We're still providing it, he just can't guarantee it.
Right. Okay.
And that's the thing everybody keeps, is losing on, is the volunteers aren't going anywhere. Even if there's a paid ambulance, you have to have a backup system to that thing. They're not going to, and rescue squad's not going anywhere. We're just telling you, we're taking the liability and saying, listen, there's a problem, we're telling you.
Now, if you create a district, now the district, that means the taxpayer in that district pays more for the district.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
You
how it
have 2
works.
districts, back up a minute.
Good.
You have 2 districts, Amenia and Wasake.
Well, those are the fire districts.
Yeah,
I assume
right.
You're talking about an ambulance.
I'm talking about ambulance.
And you have 2 ambulance districts,
You-
they're
you'd have to-
different.
Well, it's up to the town, but
Right.
You
Follow those
can
same lines.
create two separate ones, or you can correct
Well, that's what I was
one for the
getting at.
town.
If we created one for the town, you're not, you're offsetting cost a little bit by numbers. So instead of a tax increase of $200 per taxpayer, it might be a tax increase of $75 per taxpayer because you're spreading it across the whole town. So now you go do away with the problem if Amenia a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, say, hey, we're doing the same thing, we can't afford to run anymore, and we can't guarantee you. So it almost seems like separate districts, it might be better to go with one district.
Well, we've had those conversations. Well, Amenia doesn't want it.
Amenia doesn't.
They don't want it. So that's the issue.
The nice thing would be is that you went,
So-
there's 2 different types of service, BLS service and ALS service. Wasake is BLS, so Dutch is ALS. So no matter what, certain calls have to go with an ALS provider. So no matter what, New York State law says, heart attack, you gotta have a paramedic. So even if you set up a BLS service, right? Every taxpayer is paying for it. And it's not an ALS paramedic. That paramedic service is still gonna come in and bill the patient. So if you don't do it with an ALS service, you're not really saving that much. It should be, set up so that when you do your district and it gets good help, you do it with an ALS service. And that way, the volunteers were BLS, the paid service, if the town did that, would be ALS. The 2 of us can work together. So if we don't need, say it's not that bad of a call, you don't need the paramedic. Well, okay, the volunteers, we'll take them over here, you keep the ALS service, here. Now we serve both fire districts.
Yeah, but I guess from what I understand, what happens over time is the volunteers step aside and it becomes more paid, right? I think that's the reality.
Yeah, that's reality.
That's the
But there's
reality.
an opportunity for them.
Yeah, but they
I
don't,
think this is
why
a
go if the other
transition.
guy's getting paid? They're not gonna get paid, so why go? that's what happens.
Right,
That's
they're
the
trying to
reality.
hold down the costs
Well,
for the
what I'm
rest of the
saying is-
taxpayers.
But they're
That's-
providing a
You know, I
different
am
level.
EMT, so I would feel less threatened if it's a paramedic that's here and paid
Mhm.
than if it's an EMT. Because if you guys are paying an EMT, then I'm like, well, why have I been an EMT since, however long?
Yeah,
You might
I
as
mean,
well- But if it's a paramedic who you guys are paying, I should be like, oh, you know what? I'll help the town out, I'll go to the call, and if it's not that bad, I'll take the patient. The paramedic can stay in service. It makes.
yeah, because the volunteers do basic life support. I mean,
Basic life support.
basic
And then
life
the
support.
Paramedics come in, they start the IVs, they put you on a monitor, they administer the drugs that you can't do. And like I said, most calls, you need a paramedic, it's usually state law, so.
80% of the calls that we go
Yeah,
to
so
anymore are
if you
ALS
just
calls.
had
Are they?
a BLS service, you hired a BLS service, you didn't save anything, because now you're still gonna have Northern Dutchess or whoever it is, ALS service sitting there. You didn't save anything.
And some of these rescues or services are in financial trouble.
Yeah.
There's some issues.
Why are there two separate, why is there Amenia and Wausau?
Don't even go there.
That's a whole other discussion. Tough situation, but I mean.
We can go down to the bar and we can talk about
Not
that.
tonight. You go to Wausau. You have that discussion with them.
If the district were to contract with an ambulance, you said that then the ambulance can't charge the users of the service?
The ambulance provider that the district has contracted with cannot charge the user of the service because the district is the one who's contracting with them.
The cost to the taxpayer will be way more than if the district, you set up an ambulance district. Because they have to charge for, let's use a number. We have 250 plus ambulance calls a year. If we contract with them, as a district, to an ambulance service, all right, they're gonna take that average, they're gonna say 250 calls, they're gonna bill, that cost is gonna be almost 500,000 to 600,000 just for an ambulance. Now, if they do it as an ambulance district, they know they can bill that way, they know that they're gonna get 80% of their money. So instead of 500 or 600,000, they're gonna charge us $250,000.
Because the other portion of the money will come from the insurance companies.
Right.
It's not an easy process.
No.
Good luck.
And don't even think about trying to change the law allowing districts to charge, because that's, the health insurance lobby in Albany is way too strong. They'll never let it happen. That's already been floated.
But we can set up an ambulance district, have a contract with a ALS provider, and they can still bill the patient.
If the town sets it up, it's an
If we
ambulance
can
district.
set it up that way.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Fire
Good
district
idea.
cannot do it. That's the big.
We
big-
talked about that. That's gonna take a couple of years.
That's what I mean.
But it's gonna take longer if we don't start it. We gotta
Exactly.
start something
That's what
here.
it is. We only have 3 EMTs, and I'm the last person in the world that wants to go paid. I can tell you, I fought with every single one of you guys that are sitting here. Ask any one of them, I fought with them for hours on end just about coming here. But there's only 3 of us, like Scott said, we have 300 something calls a year. So 3 of us in Wausau do over 300, I probably do 200 calls a year myself. But now you can't make every call, so.
That's 200 calls. That's 200 calls that he's on. How many
Yeah.
hours, Paul, do you spend just
It's in
keeping
like-
your certification?
Yeah, and that's just, there's just hours and hours of, it's 160 hours
I mean,
course and
Maybe, some of the taxpayers will see this on TV tonight. You got 3 people doing 250 calls a year. 3 people. 3 people that are taking the time away from their families, their lives, and everything else. 3 people doing this.
And occasionally we get a few from Amenia will come down.
Yeah, and we
And Amenia's in the same boat. They have a few more. They have 10, I think. Roughly that number of EMTs that are doing the same thing.
How many calls, I mean, yeah.
They have less than we do.
They're dying for each.
3 EMTs.
It's just one of those things. where you can't
Okay.
guarantee we can get
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds like a committee needs to be formed.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get serious.
Resolution number, this is for the lease for the,
The license agreement for Dutchess Community College.
I'm not reading
Duchess?
this license agreement. Do we have to read this license agreement?
No.
Not the agreement, just the resolution.
No. Resolution number 79, right? Of 2013. Authorizing license agreement with Dutchess Community College for English as a second language program at the Amenia Town Board. Town of Amenia held at the Amenia Town Hall on the 12th day of December 2013, 7 p.m. Town Supervisor William Flood called the meeting to order and seconded by Councilman.
I'll second it.
Introduced the following resolution to wit, whereas the Town of Amenia Town Board has determined that it's in the best interest of the town for the public to have a course of instruction available for learning English as a second language. And whereas Dutchess Community College can provide such a course at the Amenia Town Hall, provided the town makes available to them for at least 6 hours per week on Mondays and Wednesdays between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. for the period from September 1, 2013 to August 15, 2014. One classroom large enough to safely fit up to 30 students and one instructor. And whereas such a classroom is available at the town Amenia Town Hall and is not currently being used by the town for town businesses. And whereas the town now wishes to provide Dutchess Community College with a license to use one classroom on the second floor of the town of the Amenia Town Hall building for the purpose of providing a course for English as a second language to members of the public. And whereas the town board wishes to authorize the town supervisor to enter into a license agreement in the form attached hereto with Dutchess Community College to allow Dutchess Community College to use one classroom in the second floor of the town, Amenia Town Hall, for the purpose of offering an English as a second language course to members of the public for no more than 6 hours per week between the hours 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays for the period from September 1, 2013 to August 15, 2014. Whereas the authorization to enter into a license agreement for the use of a classroom in Amenia Town Hall is a type 2 action that is exempt from seeker. And now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the issuance of a license to Dutchess Community College to allow Dutchess Community College to use one classroom on the second floor of the Amenia Town Hall for the purpose of offering an English as a second language course to members of the public for no more than 6 hours per week between the hours of 6 and 9 p.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays from the period, it's the same paragraph, from the period of September 1st, 2013 to August 15, 2014. And be it further resolved that the Amenia Town Board hereby authorizes the supervisor of the town to enter into and execute any documents necessary to, or incidental to effectuate the license for Dutchess Community College, including but not limited to the signing of a license agreement with Dutchess Community College in the form attached hereto. The following resolution is voted upon by our councilman, and councilman is voted as.
Supervisor Flood?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hitzelberger?
Yes.
Councilwoman Doyle?
Yes.
Councilwoman Perotti? Yes. And Councilwoman Reamer?
Yes.
Water District Committee vacant spot.
There were 2 members of the Water Committee who are dropping off the committee, so we have 2 vacancies on the Water Committee. So if there are any volunteers.
Did you advertise that at all?
No, I was unaware of this.
Okay.
Nice. So if there's anyone who would like to volunteer to work on the Water Committee, then they just need to fill out a volunteer application and drop it off at the town clerk's office.
Did you believe this, the meetings for the Water Committee, what day of the week?
Wednesdays at 5 o'clock.
Okay, also we have Victoria Alexander. She put an application in before and was never appointed?
We've had them, and we've been holding on them to do all the appointments at the same time. Applications were being accepted until end of last month. And she was the only one that submitted an application.
So that's,
Thought we could appoint her tonight.
okay, that's what I'm saying. I'd like to make a motion, we appoint Victoria Alexander to the wastewater committee, effective immediately. Is that for 1 year? Or is it for the longer terms?
I don't know.
I think they're 1 year terms, right? Yeah. So,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We also have,
Dave Menigan,
for,
ZBA?
ZBA, and he's the only applicant.
I don't have the list, so.
Well, I'll make a motion that we appoint David Menigat to the open seat on the ZBA.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it? We have Carol,
Rec Commission.
Board of
Yes.
Ethics, huh?
Yeah, you got it. Okay, you wanna do ethics?
Yes.
We have
That's the only one I
okay.
have.
Okay, so that's a new one that I received today. Ms. McEnroe currently sits on the Board of Ethics, and I've also received a letter that's attached to that from the chairman indicating that she can serve a second term.
Right. Okay, I'll make a motion, we appoint Carolyn Macron to the Board of Ethics Committee for a one-year term. Her term expires December 31st, so she'll be,
It's a new 5-year term. She's gonna
Five years.
is
do
it a 5-year
another-
term?
It's a
Yes.
5-year seat. There's 5 on that committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Second?
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody else?
Recreation Commission? We had 2 candidates, Deborah Downey and Larissa Delango.
Who's the other one?
Larissa
Larissa
Delango.
DeLango.
I make a motion that we appoint Larissa to the Rec Commission.
I'll second it.
Vote.
Councilwoman Reamer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Perotti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hitzelberger?
Yes.
Councilman Doyle?
Yes.
And Supervisor Floyd?
Yes.
Okay, and we also had 2 people apply for a volunteer position for assisting the grant writer.
And who were they?
Cheryl Morris and Monique.
And Monique.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Monique Montaigne as the assistant grant writer.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Reamer?
Yes.
Councilwoman Perotti?
Yes.
Councilwoman Hitzelberger?
Yes.
Councilwoman Doyle?
Yes.
And Supervisor Flood?
Yes.
Did you want to do the appointment for the fulfilling of Sue Metcalf's position?
I'd like to put that into executive session if we can. Continue our
Yeah, I
discussion.
think we're gonna table that till next week, maybe, or, I don't know, we can just.
Well, we should make a decision tonight so that they can train next week, because the following week is Christmas.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we need to have discussion on that,
I
okay?
think so.
Supervisor's report, I think I don't have anything for tonight. Well, we have one?
I have a couple issues I gotta
Oh,
just
yeah.
put on the record. You skipped. There's more important people here.
Okay.
Just real quick, I just want to let you know that the monthly share was remitted to the supervisor's office in the amount of $516. Also, this is the time of year we need to start planning our reorganizational meeting. I know that you guys have called around, but I need to have the authority to advertise, and it would be next week's paper. So if you guys could announce officially the date of the reorg meeting, so I can put it in next week's paper to meet the
Okay,
guys.
it's January 2nd, 7 o'clock.
And then, I did receive notification as a reminder, so thank you, Sue Lopane. The swim program begins in January. Was the town looking to continue with the community swim on Sundays from 5 to 8 p.m.? We just need to send the letter to Dominic and colleagues as we have the last
Sure.
8 years, so I can
I
go
would
ahead.
think so, right?
Yes.
Good, okay. And just so the board is aware, I have not received any applications for the open planning board seat.
There are multiple seats, correct?
2.
Chairperson,
Well, there's chairperson and then 2 actual seats.
2 actuals, so
I only have one.
there are 3 seats open?
2.
2 seats.
I'm
So
unaware of the
Nina's
2 seats.
and who else?
Who else is open?
Should only be one.
It's just Nina that's up this year.
Should only be
Yes,
one
but
per cycle.
there's a resignation being tendered. I don't believe we received a letter yet. I think the letter was sent, and I don't know, nobody seems to be able to locate it, but there'll be another letter sent.
Okay, so then I don't have,
You don't have actually right now,
so
no.
just so I have not, I
That
just.
should be done in a reorg meeting.
You
Well,
just
no, but
said-
in regards to the open seat, I've received no letters of interest. In regards to the resignation, I can announce that once it becomes official.
Right.
So, I mean, now the public's aware that there's 2 potential seats. And that's all I have for this evening.
Okay.
Board member comments?
I think we should report on the wastewater meeting. We alluded to it earlier, but, and Darlene, you said that our next step was to get Bridget Barkley to come in January at her convenience. We'll set out meeting notices so that we can get as many people, but it was my understanding that she is going to come specifically to talk to everybody about the different options. It's kind of like creating a ambulance district. How do we go forward? There are about 3 different options also, if you want to go forward, and she's the best one to talk about that. So keep your ears open for January, February, early.
And then
in the
there'll
next
be
year.
a field trip scheduled to the Hillsdale wastewater facility which is similar to the one that we're proposing for this area, to be announced.
We also, Mike DeLango and myself went to a meeting last night for the, we call it the, it's a consortium basically of 8 towns, 8 government entities in the Northern Dutchess area, kind of like the Northern Dutchess Alliance, only we're focused more in the Harlem Valley, excepting, I guess Dover wasn't represented, but it was Millbrook.
It was Dover, Amenia, Northeast, Village of Millerton,
Right.
Millbrook, Town of Washington, and Pine Plains.
Very good.
I think I'm missing one.
Stanfordville.
Stanfordville was there as well. Well, yeah, well, was there anybody there?
Yeah.
Did you come? You didn't. Okay. So the long and the short of it is that it was originally set up to be a housing, affordable housing group, a consortium funded by the Dyson Foundation. I mean, they had a specific outcome that they were looking for, but in talking to the towns, the meetings that I went to, more of the people that are town officials from these 8 towns, they're much more interested in an economic development plan. They don't really have a unified voice for creating new housing projects, or, we're all interested in affordable housing, no doubt about it, but there wasn't a consensus. What there was a consensus for was perhaps binding together, putting together a resolution for the towns, the respective towns to consider, that would say that we are interested in entering this partnership or collaboration, and that would state that we were interested in maybe potentially hiring a marketing person who might come in and help us identify what our common strengths are. We all talked about crumbling downtowns and, weeds and, decrepit buildings and jobs and the need to keep people here. But affordable housing, if you don't want to bring people here because you have cheap housing, you want to have and serve the people who are here, and that means they have to have a job here. And so we're looking at some kind of regional marketing pull that as a group of 9, we were stronger rather than the sum of the parts, and that we thought we could get funding for that potentially if we go as a collaborative unit, because that would put our application to the top of the pile. There's a lot of money out there, but they really want to see collaboration, not Village of Millerton doing one thing and the town of Northeast doing something else. They want to see collaboration. So we didn't know, is it, B&Bs, or do we, is it the scenic beauty? Is it the potential?
The main focus was that we were stronger as a group than we were as a single town. As far as grant goes and all that, grants and everything, there's more grants available for a collective group than there is for single people. Within that collective group, you decide how that grant gets split up, where the money goes. There's a collaboration of all the towns. So if it's, using numbers. If it's $1 million grant, you find out where the money goes to each town. It was actually a pretty interesting thought. It makes common sense. Again, it's just everybody's getting together. We have a lot of the same problems. More ideas, more support. I actually think it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, the ambulance district, for instance, that would be a forum where we can each, have a chance to talk to the heads of the different organizations and say, we're struggling with this problem. Well, sure enough, Northeast is struggling with that too, Pine Plains. Is there, it basically forms the same idea or concept that we had as the Harlem Valley Partnership. If there's a regional issue that comes up, we have an entity that's in place and can respond. But everything was about getting jobs here and bringing in good income.
Where was the meeting?
At Pine Plains Town Hall.
And what's the next one?
And the next one will be decided upon once they let us know. Also, there was a rec commission thought, I don't know if there's no more rec commission people here, but there was a recommendation that the health walk with walking the hallways with the doctor program was an opportunity that we could take advantage of if the town
Yeah, all
wants
we
to
need to
sponsor
do
it.
is send the information to Byron, get a certificate of insurance, and then he'll send it to the school.
Okay, so all we need to do is tell Byron this program is part of our town's
Right.
entity, and he'll send it. So does he need the name? Is that something Mary
Well, we'll
could
just,
do?
we'll just give him the whole packet,
Okay,
the whole packet, and then he can just go ahead and do what he needs to do.
so Mary should do that, or should?
Sure.
Okay.
If that's a little hard to read or anything, let me know. I think,
He's done it before.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time they've had this program.
No.
because I know Christine Ford has the originals.
Yeah, I haven't. She gave them to me.
I think he just needs
We're good
to
to
add
go.
the name, the name of the group, and then hopefully.
While we're on the Recreation Commission for a minute here, someone stole some stuff from the Rec Commission, from some private people, a batting machine and balls, and the balls that go with it. So I've asked them to submit the bill. So obviously we're gonna have to pay for that. They've asked for it back, and from what I understand, Christine Ford has never even called them back. So they're looking to get paid for their equipment that was stolen. But I'll have them submit a bill as to what it was for, or the insurance company. I don't know if the insurance company pays for it or whatever. But that's just what's on my mind.
Is that a question for Byron? Or have you already looked into this?
I have not talked to Byron about it, but so if you're gonna call him, give him a call. So it's a couple $100, I think. But I don't know what the
It was personal equipment
yeah.
Yep.
that the town was using.
They let them use it.
Yeah, they loaned it to the town.
So, but it's got to be.
It's the net for the soccer, which is not part of recreation, but the soccer equipment is still left out.
They'll take care of that.
I'm sorry,
The soccer people take care of their own equipment.
I realize that maybe they're not aware.
They're aware.
So Holiday of Lights, of course, is that, so do you want to talk about that? Not really.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
It's going to be fun.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, definitely, anybody that wants to help put final decorating touches on the town hall, you're welcome to come here at noon. We'll be working on putting the last touches here and on the last bits at Fountain Square, but we're getting there. And we definitely need more cookies and treats. If you have any homemade items that you could drop off between 10 and our final celebration here at Town Hall is at 5:30. So you could bring and drop it off at the kitchen back behind the gym. And at 3 o'clock is the dance program. And that'll be in the gym, in the auditorium this year, from 3 to 4. At 4:30, everybody has to get their cars out of the parking lot to allow for the parade of lights and walk themselves down to the intersection, and there'll be a parade. The Holiday of Lights will strike off at 5 o'clock. arrive here with Santa on board and you in the fire truck, as I understand. And they'll arrive here at 5:30. We'll have a quick tree lighting right here in front of the town hall. We'll sing a couple of carols by a choir from United Presbyterian Church, 2 songs only. Come inside, do Santa. We'll have refreshments and treats and crafts and exhibits. Come.
And raffles, don't forget the raffles.
And raffles, you can talk about the raffles.
Oh, the enhancement committee has been going around to all the businesses and folks in town, and they've put together a lot of different raffle prizes that they're going to have. Free, it's free raffle. So they have a bunch of gift certificates and prizes to give out. So that'll be ongoing while people are waiting in line to get your picture taken with Santa, which is sponsored by the Lions in the library. And a gift.
From Kildonan School.
Yeah.
Every child gets a gift at if they come for the Santa program, which is a big hit.
So it should be great. Kevin Casson has been working really hard on it, and everything's coming together.
And the library is having an open house as well at the library, so you can go there as well. I believe there was.
No, there was
on
last
Sunday?
week.
That was.
Oh, that was last week.
Last Sunday.
Okay, so
That
it's
was
all
last
here at the
Sunday.
town hall. or in-
Everything's here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, some of the businesses will be open, and they will also, have some refreshments in the businesses. Mike, did you have a grant report?
For Main Street, give an update.
Sure.
Did you
Put
wanna do
it on my
that?
list. All committee reports, I guess.
It's not on the list.
Good evening, Town Board. Mike Haggerty, grant writer. As you know, we're focusing on closing out the Main Street grant. Last week, we were very busy because the deadline was December 9th, that the contract expired. So we wanted to make sure all the expenses were incurred and that the projects were complete. It's a $195,000 grant with a $160,000 building renovation component. We had 3 projects. The Patel building was $108,750. Claire Houlihan, which was the old Mason building where the post office is, was $41,750. And the Amenia Free Library Association was allotted $10,000. There was also $25,000 for streetscape and $10,000 for grant administration. To date, the town was paid $48,500, of which they distributed all of that to Mr. Patel. We have since put in a claim of $62,000 for the remainder of Mr. Patel's grant, and we also put in a claim for all of Claire Houlihan's grant, $41,750, and the full library project, which was $8,900, a little bit short of what they had anticipated. So all of those claims have been submitted to Office of Community Renewal. I spoke to Office of Community Renewal a number of times, including Crystal Loeffner and Erin Kinney. The claims all look good. She has looked at them. If she has any questions, I told her to please get back to me, and I'll certainly address any concerns she has and provide any additional paperwork she needs. But basically, the project is complete, and we now are just waiting to be reimbursed for the grant. Also on Friday, we wanted to file the property maintenance declaration agreements, which are part of these grants. All 4 projects need them. Victoria signed them, and Dawn Marie notarized them. The town, the landowners also had to sign and notarize, and the town signed and notarized. Then we had to file them with Dutchess County, which was not an easy process because there was some confusion on the documents, whether or not it was a real estate transaction. It actually took a long time to figure out how much it would cost to file these documents. I actually spoke to Ron Gazzoli, who gave me some good advice to go see another department within the county, which we did, real property, and they looked at the document and said, you do not have to file a fee, one of the forms that was given to me by the records office. Needless to say, we did file them in time, and Victoria actually wrote a personal check because we couldn't get a check from the town. The bookkeeper was out. That can be reimbursed through the grant. So the those declarations were filed, and also the streetscape declaration was filed. The town has agreed to maintain the streetscape, the new plantings. I think it is a good thing when towns invest in tree plantings in downtown, and Mechanic Street was a worthwhile investment of public funds. I think that they are positive improvements that do have positive impacts on the community. So that's really the bulk of, the project is complete. And now I'm focusing on completing the kitchen grant, and we also are working on sorting out the Trail to the Train grants, and we did have a conference call with WSP Cells not too long ago. So I think that is moving along. They still are on track for a 2014 construction date. A lot of the holdup had to do with Metro North reviewing the design plans, but we've distributed the design plans to the Department of Transportation, and to the Dormitory Authority, and to the Greenway, so everyone has them, and it's really just a matter of getting through that process and getting the preliminary design up to the final design stage.
So who has to return it to the town? It has to be reviewed back.
All right, we're not going to get into it tonight, right?
Well, I just wanted to give an update. The DOT is going to be reviewing it, and
Each department has their own copy, Tanya. They're each department of the DOT is currently reviewing it.
But who's holding it up? They've had it since August. We should have it back by now. It's
What,
been
the
4
DOT?
months. The DOT has had their design since August. Somebody needs to call the DOT and say, listen, we need to review it back again.
Dee Dee Barrett would be delighted to make phone calls and find out for sure where we're at, and to make our application float to the top of the list if that's what it takes.
So who's going to call Dee Dee Barrett?
I think Victoria's going to arrange a conference call or a meeting.
Right.
I mean, I was on this every day. You've got to lean on these people. There has to be a project manager who is leaning on this.
Well, we haven't had a report for a while, so I think that a written response from somebody maybe would be helpful.
Okay.
they're willing to meet with the town, the department. I spoke to
think
Carolyn Ryan. I
it's
actually
time.
handed the document into Carolyn Ryan in August, so at that time, she
Well, I'll give a
is-
report next week exactly where we are and where each department is in the process, so that everybody knows.
That's good.
And I think we should have a public meeting, because as you can see, Tom Warner really doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand that we have the money. We're not spending money. We need to have a public meeting about this. It is the largest grant ever in the town of Amenia.
Well,
We
I think
have to inform the public.
we have to meet our
There's a lot of
deadlines.
misinformation
We have
about
to meet our
this.
deadlines, so that's
Okay.
very important.
Anyway, the second largest grant in town is complete.
Patel building looks wonderful. The Patel building looks incredible.
It
Doesn't
does.
it?
It is nice.
It's a nice job.
And also Leo Blackman did
Yeah,
a
they did a nice job.
designing it.
It's the whole thing looks very good. It's a great project. Hopefully, someday the people will respect it and enjoy it. But we'll
Well,
see.
just to say, it was a headache, but, it is worth applying for these
Yeah.
and considering another one. And I did talk to Aaron Kinney about that.
We should do Wassaic. You should do Wassaic.
Right. I mean, I think we've learned from this, so the next time will not be as painful. I mean, I certainly have, and it was the
That's true.
first time we've done this
Well,
type of grant.
there was a lot of, paperwork that wasn't spelled out in the grant, like, filing the property declarations with the county and what forms you had to use. I mean, there was a lot of detail that, now we know,
Right.
a lot of the details that we didn't.
Well, I just hope the public realizes
It was a lot of work.
what's been done
Actually,
there.
one of the reasons we got this grant, I believe, is the fact that our comprehensive plan stipulated that we felt the downtown area was viable for business, and it just needed to be enhanced and, create a walkable community by having these buildings done.
And
I
we
wish we
had-
could have done more,
yeah.
but we couldn't.
Right, well, the application itself included that,
Right, but
parts
that's,
from the
I was just reading,
comprehensive plan.
it was in the Association of Towns, magazine that we got, it said that when we have grant applications, if it has anything to do with our comprehensive plan,
Absolutely.
it gets a lot more points. So, you know,
It is valuable to have those plans. Even the
It
Hamlet
is.
plan was a good resource to fall back on
Yeah.
for these.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike. Mike Kelsey?
Michael Kelsey, County Legislator, and I think I'm probably the only one in the room still happy to see you meeting at this late hour. I apologize for my late arrival. I had 2 town boards before this. I want to give you an update on the county budget. As you probably know by now, the county did adopt the budget legislature. It's now with the executive. It's a $439.3 million budget. It puts the county in a strong economic position of prosperity. Unfortunately, it does so at the expense with great burden upon the taxpayer. The burden has a 1.9% property tax increase, and the bulk of the budget is balanced based upon a new energy tax that I spoke about last time. It is going to tax home residential electricity, oil, propane, natural gas, steam, and firewood. It'll be at a 3.75% rate, and it'll begin on March 1st of this year coming up.
3.7, how are they doing this?
3.75% of sales tax. And so they put it at that sales tax rate, which is we have the authority from the state to charge 3.75%. Now, it's important to realize that the legislature did not have to tax sales tax at that high of a rate. They could have done it 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, any variation within that. And the proposal from the county executive and adopted by the legislature was at that 3.75%. It did pass with 14 votes. Mine was not one of them. I voted no. I voted against it. As I said before, I felt it was cruel and inhumane. We should not be taxing home energy use, specifically in the winter months for those on fixed incomes. They got their magic number on the votes through a last-minute compromise, which I think is good. It's a sunset. Unfortunately, it's several years out. It's February 29th, leap year of 2017 is when this tax will go away. The legislature has the authority to rescind and repeal this at any time. So that's important to know, and I will be working towards that effort to repeal it. I think it's a bad tax. It also, once that magic vote was there and they funded the budget gap with that, the tone changed in the meeting. All of a sudden, people began adding stuff to the budget. 4 positions that were supposed to be cut were added back into the budget. Money was set aside for soil and water conservation. A process server money was put in for that. Process server delivers court orders so that law enforcement won't have to. And then a couple other changes. One adds bed for homelessness and a teen gardening program. Noble causes, but there was no cuts. It was all adding. And part of that is because I think this energy tax, although it was said to only close our budget gap, which is $7.5 million, I think it's going to bring in a lot more money than that. I think it'll probably bring in around $12 million this year. I think, and this is only March 1st through the end of the year, I think next year you're probably looking at $15 million. And this is just speculation. Partly, the budget office said this tax would cost each household $75. I looked at my numbers from last year on electricity, on oil, on wood pellets, and the number for my house is only 900 square feet. I would have paid $122 last year. So I think it's very, very conservative in what they're predicting. I think it's going to bring in a lot of money. I think the incentive for this is, one, the county has a revenue problem, we have a budget gap. Also, I think it is to put money into our fund balance to improve our bond rating. And thirdly, I predict that the county executive will use the excess money to settle union contracts, which I think will result in employees getting raises on the backs of the taxpayers paying an energy tax. So that's my prediction on where it's headed. Hopefully it'll be repealed before that. Now, as far as repealing, I have a proposal. You'll be hearing more about it. I spoke with the Poughkeepsie Journal for over an hour yesterday. I have op-eds coming out. And it's an issue that I've been researching since July. And if it had been adopted, we wouldn't have to do this energy tax. And that is looking at Dutchess Community College. We do an annual subsidy to the college of $10.8 million a year. In addition to that, we do bond service for their capital project improvements. And when you add up all the costs, last year we spent $15.7 million on the community college, which is up $800,000 from the year before. So the problem is we've been year after year cutting our budget, laying people off, and the community college has not been doing the same. Under state law, we can't reduce our contribution to the college, and it's called a maintenance, minimum maintenance of share. We can't reduce it. And I've been looking at it since July. How can we go about doing this? Because that is a huge burden on the county, and it's a huge burden on the taxpayer, specifically now with this energy tax in place. The conclusion I've reached, and I presented it to the legislature, is that we have little choice but to end our relationship with the college. The community college is set up with the county as a local sponsor, the state, and the board of trustees. Their funding is through the state, the county, and tuition. And with this, if we were to walk away, end our sponsorship, I believe that the state is in a position to assume that $10 million annual subsidy. I've spoken with Assemblyman Lawler, who came to our budget meeting, embraced this idea. I've spoken with Senator Gibson, who's interested in this idea. What I've proposed at the county is we're going to set up a committee to really look at this, whether the county can leave this relationship, whether we have to find another sponsor, or whether if we just walk away, what happens. College, as you know, came about in 1957 through the efforts of the county. It's a great institution. It provides great opportunities for people. It's just gotten to the point where we can't afford it anymore. 70% of our county budget is state mandates, and this is not a mandate. And the question is why is the county in higher education? I personally believe the college will continue uninterrupted. There'll be no change to the schedule. I think it can go forward as a SUNY university. It's already billing and marketing itself as SUNY Dutchess, and I think that it would be very easily to transition. The college is in a very strong position. It has $12 million in its fund balance. That's 20% of its operating budget. It also has a foundation with $7 million, and it also has a very successful association which runs the daycare, the bookstore, the dormitories, and the cafeteria. Last year alone, the bookstores made about $1 million, just shy of it, in book sales. They're in a very strong position. I think that they are ready to, just like a child, a parent gives birth, nurtures it. I think they're in their adulthood, and I think that the county is in a position where we're in tough economic times. I think we can step away, and that's what I'm proposing that we do, and use the excess resources by not spending it to get rid of this energy tax. So,
isn't it also true that like 75 or 80% of the students there are from Westchester?
I don't know the percentage. There's a large amount, but the dorms themselves have 80% from other counties.
Other counties.
And what's interesting is when students from other counties come, those counties send money to the college. And for instance, if you look at just Ulster and Putnam, two neighboring counties, last year, and their students, the college made about $1.5 million from those counties on top of what we've been giving the college. So I think the college is in a strong position, and it's changed. So people are shocked, but I think it's something that we need to look at. The legislators I've spoken with, Legislator Allison McAvery is a Democrat, is sponsoring it with me, and I expect we'll have co-sponsors on both sides of the parties, really looking at this issue. I'm looking for good legal minds, good financial minds, really, because we need to dissect this, because it's never been done before. Can we walk away? But hopefully, I think that there's support for this. If it's possible. There's a lot of working parts. There's bonding. We have debt service going back 15 years. We have to look at how do we do this. We own the property. They own the buildings. So it's an interesting concept we'll be exploring as we go forward. Also on our radar, we have a veto override meeting scheduled next Monday. I don't expect any vetoes, but there could be. At that meeting, we learned yesterday that we will also be looking at a bond to purchase the property adjacent to the Dutchess County Jail. Apparently it just came on the market, and a bond will be considered. I don't know the details yet, but that will be for the purposes, obviously, of expanding the jail. So that'll be considered on Monday. And then good news, I think, is Also on our agenda will be 4 local laws. I'm the sponsor for all 4 of them. That is brought forward to give tax relief in the form of property tax relief to 4 groups: seniors, low-income disabled property owners, combat veterans, and Cold War veterans. We currently have those 4 exemptions in place, but we don't have them to the maximum amount, and specifically with this energy tax going forward, the time is right to increase the amount of tax relief to those groups that we can, so at least some people will feel the benefit. Those who aren't in those groups who may have difficulties with energy tax can also apply for HEAP through the Department of Community and Family Services. The county executive included money in his budget. The legislature increased it, so there is money available for those that are really having a difficult time. But unfortunately, I think everybody will have difficulty with this tax. Lastly, I received a call from the Millbrook Independent. They have a very sharp reporter there. And with the closure of the Taconic DDSO, there's an issue with some of the patients there that were in the LID, which I think it's intensive treatment area, that they plan to release them into group homes. Some of these individuals have committed sex crimes, but because of their lack of their mental state, have not been considered criminals, but are in a secure facility. The state is putting them into these facilities, group homes, and there's questions about whether there's the proper security in place. When I received the call from Millbrook Independent, I sent a letter to the Director of Probation, Mary Ellen Still. She's also the head of the Criminal Justice Council. And I suggested that a case-by-case basis evaluate the risks for all these people and really take a good hard look whether or not what's best for the community, what's best for these people. I did receive a response today saying that they don't have the resources and they're an advisory group and that it's really the state's responsibility, and suggested I run a community forum. So I bring this to your attention, and I would be glad to host a forum. I don't know what value it would have, but if anybody would like that, these people would be released into a group home on Sin Patch Road. So I just bring that to your attention. And I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
The people being released into group homes, are they like wards of the state?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, I don't know fully. I believe they're persons that committed some kind of offense of a sexual nature and was just.
The reason for the question is, are they on the sexual offender list?
No, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong. I don't believe so, because I don't believe they've been convicted. I think they were judged not to have the mental capacity to understand the nature of what they're doing. And so it's a fine line between a hospital where they're receiving intensive treatment, therapy, but they're not criminals. And so because they're not criminals, you don't send them to jail. The question is are they a risk that we shouldn't be putting them into group homes in the public? Should they be in a hospital such as Rockland Psychiatric Center? And I think that's really the consideration. And there's a fine line between their civil liberties and what if they have a role in the community. And that's really I think it's case by case on each one of them, and their past, how they've been responding to treatment, and really evaluating the risk. And I think that's case by case is how it has to be done. Whether somebody's going to do that or whether there's a short window of time before the facility closes, and that's really questions for the state and how they're going to handle that.
I just may have missed some critical part, but Dutchess Community College seems like it provides a really important alternative for a lot of families. It's an affordable, excellent education. Everybody I talk to says this is a great alternative for their kids. So rather than try to change something fundamentally that's working so well and generating and doing is getting more and more self-sufficient, why don't you just pull back the funding and let them stay on their own 2 feet rather than change the paradigm?
We can, and that's something where I've been looking at is saying, can we reduce the amount? Yeah. And the states and the college says no, and the state says you can't. In 1991, the state passed a law that you have to maintain a minimum level of effort, which for us is $10.8 million each year. And then in addition, there's bond requests that we have a responsibility as a sponsor. We have fiscal obligations and legal obligations that right now is 15.7 million, and it's rising every year, that we can't reduce it. And this past budget, I submitted amendments, let's reduce it by X amount of dollars, $1 million, and we push back. So we can't. The only thing we can do, and I maybe do, and that's what I'm proposing, is I think we can walk away. Now, if we announce intentions, I don't know whether that'll happen. I think the college has it in their ability. They're sitting with the money. They could say, their board of trustees saying, we're going to give the money back. Or we have to give it, they don't have to accept it. And they're not doing that. They're sitting, they're watching.
I'm sure they're not going to give the money back.
But
we don't need it this year.
It could be just us having in this committee. We may not even have a meeting, and the college may say, look, we need to talk, and it could be a negotiation that maybe they end up giving us some of our money back. They're fully free to do that, and maybe that's what comes out but we can't reduce the share. And even though the last several years, as far as I've been there, and whenever there's budgets, whenever there's bond requests, I've been emphasizing, we've been cutting back, we've been doing our part, and they're not doing that.
So the dormitories were a good example. You suggested we not take that responsibility on, that they can afford to do that. But we, as the fiscal sponsor, are required to, that you voted up or down, right? I mean, you have some ability to say no.
We can say yes or no on the bond requests, and we've done that on some of the bond requests. But the issue comes, they come and say, well, we need a new roof. Typically if you don't fix your roof, it's going to cost more later. So as good stewards, we fix the roof, and so. But that's on top of the annual subsidy. Annual subsidy, we have to give $10.8 million a year. $10.8 million covers our bond, or not our bond, our budget gap. Where we wouldn't have to do the energy tax.
So they have no responsibility to use their own reserve funds to fix a roof. They go to you and say we need to.
They come to us because it's reimbursable by the state. And this was one argument I've had with them, and they come and say, well, we want to buy this, or we want to fix this. Last year's their master plan electrical upgrades was $300,000. And I said, the $300,000, you're sitting at that point, they had $15 million in their fund balance. I said, you got $15 million, why are you asking us? And they said, well, because you do $150, the state gives $150. And that way it was free money. I said, it's not free money. This is taxpayers' money. It's out of one pocket county, one pocket state. And the arguments, but they're saying, no, because the money comes from state and county, we don't have to spend it. But yet they don't give any money back to us when we're hurting. And that's really meanwhile, their compensation plans are huge. We're struggling. We took money from the towns, as you know, last year. Everybody's hurting, and an idea with that logic, right or wrong, was we're gonna spread the pain. The college is not spreading in that pain, and the college. You're right. College is a gem. Its tuition is low. People go there, and academics are great opportunities. The issue, and I'm not faulting them. The issue is we can't afford to keep paying, and where do we cut? And we've looked at our budget this year and said, do we cut snow plowing? Do we cut sheriff road patrols, mental hygiene? $7.5 million worth. We said we can't do that. The college is one area that we don't have to provide that service, and I think they can function without us. So that's what we're exploring. What happens out of it, I think the college will probably pony up and say, we're going to give you, write us a check. I think they're capable of doing that, and I think that might be the short-term answer. If not, I think it's worthwhile for us to consider, do we have this divorce? Do we separate from the college, and do they exist in some other means? SUNY University, private college, I don't know.
SUNY is a classier name than Dutchess Community College. SUNY's have
It's
a
a
higher
great,
reputation.
people, whatever the name is, they're doing things. I mean, the feedback that I'm getting is a great opportunity for people of all economic levels. It's accessible, and that's really important right now.
And I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
It's just, how do we
pay for it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I just wanted to add that I appreciate that we have the sunset clause in there for the energy tax, but like I said, I think that once they hit that 7.5 million on income in that, if you could just make a motion and have them turn it off just for the end of the year. I mean, I know they got to go a few years, but it was really vile and disgusting to watch the amount of greed and hands go in the cookie jar the minute that they decide. It was just, like I said when you came here, we can't afford this.
Right.
And then to have it go through, and we appreciate that you didn't vote for it, but then after that, it was.
And on top of that, we could have cut other areas as well. I was throwing out the shared services grant, that was set up last year because the sales tax is being taken away from the towns. Now with the new energy tax, the towns receive some of that money. And I said, we don't need the shared services grant. Let's take that away. And the legislator said, no, let's keep it. And so there were areas that were low-hanging fruit that we could have cut, and there was not the will to do that. And it's bothered me incredibly, because I've seen the philosophical change. We've been cutting the last couple of years. They've been bad cuts. I mean, they've been tough decisions. And now all of a sudden we're taxing home energy, and now let's spend, and so it bothers me, and I'm not sure where it's headed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Can you come to the podium?
No, I'm sorry, each stand there. Does the town have a problem in EMS in this town? I was just wondering if it was ever addressed on the county level, the legislation level. There's a problem, emergency medical service in Dutchess County in general speaking, and I don't know if it was ever talked about on the legislative floor or not.
Okay, for the people at home, there was a question about EMS services, a problem in town, and asked whether we heard about it in the county. And I'm need more detail. At this point, I'm not aware of what you're talking about, but
There's a problem within Dutchess County that there's an emergency medical.
There's not enough volunteers
a
to
lack of
cover the
volunteers.
ambulance calls.
And I know back when Lucille Patterson was charged with a plan police, that way EMS service for all Dutchess County throughout the county, and it kind of went kaput. I hadn't known if it's been brought back up before at all in the recent times or not.
No, not recently to my knowledge. We do have a couple legislators that are on the various councils, E91 or whatever, that they may have more knowledge than I do, but there hasn't been I know 3-4 years ago there was consideration as far as how do we recruit volunteers, but that was several years back, so I don't think recently.
I think that's something you might want to address.
Sure.
That's your next legislation. There's a problem creating this town alone, and the previous towns have done all Harlow Valley.
Right.
So
right. Good point. Good point.
At the county level.
Good
And
point.
before you were here, I also made the point that the Affordable Health Care Act does not allow us to go across the state to Sharon Hospital anymore. So anybody who signs for the Affordable Health Care will have to go from Amenia, Dover, whatever, this corridor, all the way over to St. Francis or Vassar. And that's going to put a big strain on the ambulance services where there might not be enough ambulances.
All right. Thank you, and everybody have Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Same to you, thank you. Any other?
I'll just say there's a dance recital, also Friday, tomorrow at 6:30 in the auditorium. So you're welcome to come to that if you can't come to Holiday of Lights on Saturday at 3 o'clock.
But we hope you can make Holiday of Lights, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
I spoke at the last meeting about looking into alternatives in order to have a light on our flag as long as we're flying it 24/7. I did get one estimate from one electrician, and I'm going to be meeting with another one at noon tomorrow to look at another alternative so that we can get 3 bids and 3 different ideas.
Terrific.
To be able to do that. And I just wanted to mention that as you're shopping for Christmas, to please shop local. We have a lot of wonderful stores and restaurants here who would, love for you to get a gift certificate from them and support them.
That's it. Are we going to go to executive session?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we go into adjourn the meeting and go into executive session to discuss, what are we discussing here?
Personnel.
Personnel issue.
I'll make that motion, or I'll second it. Right, I'll second it. That's a yes. Darlene? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Aye.